strong through it all. Forest men, he never fall.
What's going on, everyone? Sandman here. I had a special guest on. I normally don't do these intros, but there was just so many topics we covered in 2.5 hours. I just want to give a little brief thing. In the beginning, we talk about the world, and some politics. Not all things said on the in the video reflect the views of the channel, but most of them do. Also, Dale didn't have to give me 2.5 hours of his time. I really do appreciate that. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of comments, and I'm sure we can set it up again where we can get those questions answered and we can continue the story from uh, his Green Beret days and what it took to be a Green Beret and how it was different from the Delta selection. And then his time with the alphabet agencies, the CSA, CIA, maybe the NSA, he did stuff for, not sure, but he did say the CIA. He's got a book, American Badass. I'm gonna grab a copy, man. The picture you guys saw in the intro, and then you'll see it at the end. A Netflix series is coming out. He was very heavily involved in. Also, he mentioned a movie, so I'm going to be keeping an eye out on that. So in the future, I'm thinking we do another video answering questions and then continuing on, like I said, from the Green Beret, Delta Selection, CIA, all that, and then his private time, uh, his private work for security, nuclear power plants, people and businesses and experiences and all that. Also, we talk about the 1989 Panama invasion. He was the lead breacher on the prison to save the hostages. It's a hell of a story. We talk about Black Hawk Down. We talk about Afghanistan. We talk about the Hollywood culture. We talk about the pullout of Vietnam. We talk about the pullout of Afghanistan. And he's not afraid to challenge leadership, and he's not afraid to stand up and give his opinion. So, you know, we covered a lot, so that's why I'm doing this intro. I hope you guys enjoy it. I'm out.
All right. What's going on, everyone? I got a very special guest today, a 37-year military vet who has gone to Tier 1 operations and special forces for the United States of America and was the breacher in the 1989 famed Panama prison raid. His name's Dale Comstock. I'm going to have him introduce himself, and he'll start taking it away from childhood. Take it away, Dale.
All right, hey man, thanks for having me on the show. So for all the listeners out there, some of you may or may not have heard of me. So I'm going to give you a little backstory or background story, who I am, what I've done, and where am I, and all those types of things. So right now I'm actually communicating to you from Bali, Indonesia. I live in Bali. I've got a home family here, got a couple of businesses here, but I also live in the Philippines and I also live in Florida. So I'm trying to travel between 3 countries. I literally have 3 families in all 3 countries. So I got an extended and blended family, so to speak. As far as my background, I did 20 years United States Army as a Green Beret. I was a Delta Force operator. I was an infantryman, long range scout. Actually retired in 1981. Prior to 9/11, in fact, only a couple months before 9/11 is when I retired. And then I got recruited by the government, the Alphabet Company, to be a paramilitary officer for them. And so I did that for almost 10 years, doing the same thing I did in the military. But I got paid a lot more money and had a lot less support, so to speak. What I mean by that is I would go out by myself or with 1 or 2 other guys in a band of merry Afghans or Iraqis or others and go take it to the bad guys. So I grew up in the military culture. My mother's German, my father's American, and most of my childhood, my teenage years was spent in Germany. So I'm fluent in German, and I do have a working knowledge of Portuguese and Spanish, know a little bit about Bahasa as well. And so I grew up in the military culture. I was used to military culture, and it was just made common sense to me, anyways, that when I graduated high school, I went right into the military. I wanted to be a ranger. That didn't work out only because, not that I want to, it's just I was promised the slot, and then when I shipped off, they said, "Oh, there's no more slots left," and it was kind of a bait and switch. But I ended up in the 82nd Airborne Division in a infantry company, and then from there, ultimately, I reenlisted 4 years later. And when I did, I decided to, try for Delta Force, which is probably one of the toughest selection courses in the world, bar none. It's harder than SEALs or anything else out there. And just to give you the audience some perspective, there's only 2 selection courses a year, where they literally pan the records of all military members of the United States military, and they look for the guys that meet the minimum requirements to apply to try out to be a Delta Force operator. At that time, it was just the Army, but now it's military wide. Why? Because they're having a very difficult time finding the guys that can meet the requirement. The requirements are stringent, and it's stringent for a reason. So imagine this: twice a year, they bring in, it's 100 candidates twice a year, so 200 a year. In my class back in 1986, I had 110 candidates in the class. I don't know why, but there was 110. And the 110 that started the program, 6 of us completed it and 3 of us got selected. At that time, to my knowledge, I was the youngest guy at the age of 23 to ever get selected. The average age was 33. In fact, the other 2 guys were 33 that made it. So it gives you some perspective. It's an individual effort. There's no group activities. You go through this program by yourself. It is very rigorous. It's physical, but it's also very mental. And so what they're looking for, and I'll quote a friend of mine who always says that we're not looking for the best guy, we're looking for the right guy. And there's a lot of truth to that. And you can be as physically fit as you want to be, but if you're not as smart as the table I'm sitting in front of, then you're not going to make it. It's more than that. You can be very intelligent. They're looking for more than that. In fact, they won't even tell you what they're looking for, but it's all based on psychological evaluations and other things. And they've got it nailed down to a science. And they actually know which guys are actually going to make it before they even start, based on the psychological profiles, all the testing. There's a number of factors that they analyze and consider, and they've got it down to the point where they can predict with pretty high accuracy and reliability what guy's most likely going to make it. And it's anybody can be trained to be a physical fitness stud, but this is something you either have it or you don't. And that's what they're looking for. And they won't tell you what they're looking for because they don't want the information to get out there, and then other guys start gaming the program and figuring out how to get through the system, and they're a bad fit. And so very scientific, very exclusive, very, very difficult to get to. And like I said, by far the hardest selection program in the world. So I did all that for 20 years. Retired right before 9/11, started a security company, and then at the same time was recruited again by the Alphabet company to be a paramilitary officer or operative for them. Did that for 10 years. Spent a lot of time downrange, Afghanistan, Iraq. I've actually been in every conflict since 1983 Grenada as a combat arms as a warrior. My job was to go out and face the enemy on the battlefield, at close range or long range, didn't matter, and deal with them. So I've got a lot of combat experience. I've got over 500 combat missions under my belt. I've been decorated for valor twice. That was just in the military. The Alphabet company doesn't give you awards. They do, but they don't let you keep them. They actually let you look at it and they put it in the safe, and you'll never get to bring it home or anything like that. So, anyways, it's not even about the valor or nothing like that. It's about having purpose and being a part of something that's bigger than you, but it's something righteous and good. So I enjoyed my time in working for in the military and for the government for the most part. There were some times, and I won't get political about anything, but there were some times I look back and I just shake my head, and I think about some of my friends that are dead and how they died needlessly because we had cowards, literally cowards, that were the commanders in chief in our country. And a perfect example is the fall of Kabul. 13 dead Americans, needlessly died for a failed and flawed agenda. And it happens. And unfortunately, you know, war is a racket. Let's face it, war is a racket. And sometimes we do good things, but oftentimes we are led into believing we're doing something good when it's just a scam to line people's pockets at another level, right? So I won't go into all the politics. And so, so like I said, I retired from the military in 2001, got recruited, worked for the Alphabet company. Concurrently, I had started a company 3 years later, security company. I sold it to G4S Wackenhut. And then I started another company right away. They didn't make me sign a non-disclosure agreement, which was kind of a mistake because I just went ahead and rebuilt my company in a different name and went right back into the same industry. So I was doing a lot of nuclear security consulting. I developed the security architecture for a lot of the nuclear power plants in the United States. At one point, I serviced all the nuclear power plants, had no competition. And it was one of the reasons that G4S Wackenhut wanted to buy my company. I was kicking their ass, basically, what it came down to, and I was keeping them out of the business. So I really enjoyed that kind of work. And then moving forward, another company came along, bought my second company in 2011. Concurrently, I was still in the agent in the government, and then simultaneously, I got recruited by not recruited, but I got discovered by the Discovery Channel, which was interesting. So next thing you know, I'm on television. I'm on a show called One Man Army. I performed pretty well enough that NBC contacted me. They want to be on one of their programs called Stars and Stripes with Terry Crews, other celebrities. This was during the Olympics, and from there, kind of my career in Hollywood started to launch. I got surrounded by a management team that asked me to be the poster boy for their production company. It was a conservative production company. Members were based out of Dallas. They included producers that were already well established in Hollywood. And so next thing you know, I'm Mr. Hollywood. I'm out there doing movies, stunts, acting, and I'm being paraded around and my story's being told. And I did that for a couple of years. And, you know, I was asked to move to Los Angeles. At the time I lived in Florida, and I was told if I can live in Los Angeles, they could have me on movie sets every week. And, and this is what they were telling me, not me making this up, but they were like, look, you could be the next Danny Trejo, you look scary and I'm like, okay, I'll be the bad guy, if I can make money. But what finally happened was I realized at some point, this is not who I am. I'm not a Hollywood guy per se. I'm not a good actor, I don't think, maybe with some training, but my heart really wasn't into it. Partly because of the culture. It's just a weird culture. And it's just a weird culture. And so I had a longing to go back to my roots, which is military paramilitary culture. So from there, I moved to Hong Kong in 2014, 2015, and I ran a security detail, was part of a security detail for a multi-billionaire investment banker. I ran that program for a while, and then I met my wife, who's Indonesian there. And long story short, she moved back to Indonesia. I followed her back to Indonesia. Spent some time in Jakarta, saw some business opportunities there, built a security company or enterprise there. And then we finally moved that to Bali 7 years ago. So I got about 10 years in Indonesia and then 7 years in Bali, where we have our brick and mortar security companies and a bar, restaurant, lounge here as well. Now, what do I do? So my wife runs all those businesses. I don't run them. I built them. I hand them off to her because I'll wreck it. I'll get bored after a while. So I was like, you better take these or I'll just get bored and it'll sink, and I move on and I do other things. I still work in the security space. Now I do niche work in that I don't work for security companies. I don't work for Blackwater. I work for myself. I've essentially been self-employed for 24 years. Even in the government, I was a contractor. I worked when I wanted to, made very good money, but it was pretty dangerous work. As much as dangerous as the stuff I did in the military, if not more, because like I go down range with one or two other Americans and that was it. And so anyways, So I do go out and like I said, I do niche work in that if somebody may call me and go, hey, I got an issue, you know, and it's internationally, you know, hey, I'm missing my kid, or somebody kidnapped my husband, or can you go bring my kid out of this country and bring him home to me? And people pay me money for operations like that. And I work usually alone, or I may bring one or two of the guys with me to give me some backside support, or support the operations. Um, so very, like I said, very special work, very unique, niche work, but it's very satisfying because I still get to be an action guy, so to speak. I get to help people. I do interdict bad guys and bad institutions and syndicates. I go out there and I still intervene in their operations and the terrible things they're doing. And you know, I take their money and put them to bed if that's what it takes, because there's some really evil, mean, nasty humans out there. If you want to even call them humans, they're garbage. You know, I'm talking at the level of, you know, sex trafficking, child molestation, and kidnapping, money laundering. There's a very dark world out here, and most people in America, you know, they sit comfortably at home behind their desk or on the couch watching TV, and they have no idea what the rest of the world is like, you know. And there's this notion that everybody loves us, you know, and that we're the meanies, when in fact, I'll tell you that most countries and a large majority of the world population hates us, not because we're doing bad things, but because we're doing good things. They hate us because we are in a way privileged. Man, we're the richest country in the world. I mean, we have freedom. We have things that they don't get to enjoy. And let's face it, it's part of the human condition. You know, they see that and it makes them angry. It makes them jealous. Why do you think so many people are trying to migrate into our country? They're not running to Russia. They're not running to South Korea. They're not running to China. You know, they're not even running to Russia, to Europe at the levels they're coming to America. Why? Because they see it, right? And unfortunately, we're attracting a lot of criminals and a lot of garbage, you know, and subhuman, you know, matter that we don't want in our country. But I've lived in, traveled to, worked in over 101 countries. I'm constantly out there. I've been doing this for a long time. I think I know something about, you know, the rest of the world, what people think of us. You know, not everybody thinks badly of us. You know, there really are a lot of people that love America, but I can tell you in the last few years, they've kind of looked at us like, you know, like I'll use Indonesia, for example, Bali, man. They are not, well, how should I couch this, man? Um, they're not buying into the American, you know, ideology of, you know, we're all equal. You know, men can be women, women can be men. You know, let's mutilate boys and girls. Oh man, they are hell on that. And by the way, I will tell you this: living in Indonesia, it's one of my favorite places in the world because the culture, the people are the nicest people in the world. And they're not sitting there looking at your rice bowl going, how much do you have? I want some of that, you know, give it to me because I'm entitled to it. Everybody minds their business. Everybody gets along. All religions here accepted, except for Israelis, Jews. They got a little issue with that. You know, for whatever purpose. All right. I'm not going to take a side on that one. I have my personal opinion on it, but I always find it kind of interesting that they don't accept Jews here. But they're still humans. But outside of that, you know, Catholics, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindu, they all live side by side. And they just mind their damn business, and all they're worried about is getting along and, you know, and it's pretty amazing place. You know, nobody's out here pissing and moaning about you got more rice than I got, and you know, I'm not gonna say it's idyllic, but there's some flaws like in any country, but there's a reason I live here, and there's a lot of reason there's a lot of other expats here, not many Americans, but a lot of Russians. In fact, since COVID happened, there's over 46,000 Russians have moved here to Bali. They call it Little Moscow now because they're fleeing the war, and Ukrainians, you know, and so they're here trying to escape the madness there, and they just want to live their lives, make a business, and not die, you know, for a stupid war. So that's a little backstory, things I do. Like I said, I do security work still. I also do a lot of online performance coaching in that life coaching, if you want to call it that. Been doing this for about 7 years. I've got over 400 clients, and essentially what I do is I help people using science to be successful. I help people change their mindset, teach people how to think and not what to think. And what I mean by that is I literally explain the physics of success, and that's all it is. And I've done very well at that. It's my part-time hustle. I do it for altruistic reasons, not because I'm trying to get rich off of people. That's, in fact, the only compensation I get is for my time, not for my experience or anything else. And but I enjoy it. It's something I do to give back, to help people elevate them in their life. Been very successful at it. I've coached literally Catholic priests. I've coached Tony Robbins coaches. I've coached doctors, police, law, you name it, man. The whole spectrum of people. And people that come to me have a desire to move up in their station in life, they're tired of being stuck in the mud, and they're looking for a way to excel. And everything, the crap that most people teach is all crap, and I should, like, when people tell you to think positive, what does that mean? I tell you what that means, and I show you the physiology, the biology, and the psychology behind that, and what actually happens to you, the transformations. So that's my side hustle, is the coaching piece of it. And then I'm engaged in a lot of other business endeavors and enterprises. I'm always doing business development, and I'm always looking for other opportunities to, well, of course, improve my life, improve my family's life, increase my station in life. So big picture, that's what I, who I am, how I ended up where I'm at today. And so, I'm here to share information and illuminate my life
Okay.
and show people what's possible. Most people have no idea that, yeah, you can just pack your crap up and go to a foreign country, fucking drive tent pegs and, and build a life. Life is it's a series of choices. At the end of the day, series of compromises. You can do this, you can do that, or you can choose to stay stuck in the mud. And I have a saying, what you're not changing, you're choosing. So, for anybody out there listening, if you look at your life and go, my life sucks. Well, guess what? You chose it, and you keep choosing it, change it, right? So that's kind of what I do. Big picture, I wear a lot of hats. Any day, on every given day, I change hats and do different things.
That's one hell of a story, man. There's going to be a lot to cover, so maybe we do more than one video, But I definitely wanted to, when you brought up the Hollywood culture, that's the same ideology that the other countries are questioning us on, huh?
Yeah, well, so exactly, man. So we've been very influential as Americans on the cultures around the world, right? So, for example, when Black Lives Matter, that I'm going to call them a terrorist organization because that's actually what they are. Let's just be honest about it. Stop playing, the bullshit games. But here in Indonesia, they watched the crap, right? They bought into the propaganda, and so I remember driving down the road. There was a big like grocery store complex, and they had literally painted a big yellow, Black Lives Matter fist on the black asphalt. Big thing, Black Lives Matter. And I'm like, what do you people know about Black Lives Matter in Indonesia? But because they're being brainwashed, and they've been told that black people are being oppressed and suppressed and killed on a daily basis by white cops, and they bought into the propaganda. If you look at the other stuff in the world, you look at the rap culture, it's literally started in America, and it's all over the planet. Here, even in Indonesia, Philippines, no matter where I go, everybody's wearing the saggy pants and a bebop, and so we have a very strong influence. Okay. And guess who's influenced the most? It's the young people. Why? Because they're not using critical thinking skills. They hear something, they see something, and they just buy into it automatically. And then they mimic it, and they imitate this art culture. not realizing that. Did you think that maybe it's just bullshit? Maybe there's just, and I'm going to pick on BLM. And by the way, and here's the other thing. Okay. I am not racist. My wife is a Muslim. Okay, she's Muslim, Indonesian. Literally have 3 children from a black mother. I've got another child from a Hispanic Asian mother, and I have another child from a Asian mother. I'm not. It's not about racism. It's
Mhm.
about being honest and
Yeah.
calling it like you see it, right? And this is what most people don't have the guts to do. Most people in America, in the world, do not have the guts to actually stand their ground and stand there, even through all the withering, assaults and insults from people, stand their ground and speak their mind, and do that. Most people will fold and they'll follow the herd, just avoid strife, avoid conflict, and being that guy. I'm not that guy. Okay, I have no problem with that.
Oh yeah.
So I want to caveat that, because people will start with, he's a racist old white guy, and so I'm not. Okay, what I am is a free thinker. I have principles and I stand on my ground and I analyze. Okay, I analyze, I observe, and I look at things, and I do comparative analyses before I judge, and then I arrive at my conclusion based on what I think are the facts from everything all the information I've collected. So I'm a critical thinker. And if all you got, and again, I'm gonna start with Black Lives Matter. All you got to do is think about, who the founders were, and look at them. They have enriched themselves. One of them owns
Oh
3
yeah.
mansions in white neighborhoods. Okay, and is under investigation for all kinds of crap related to money. And my question is, what have they done to help the black culture? And I can tell you, zero. Nothing has happened. That culture hasn't benefited, and I can say that with passion. And I can say that as a concerned white guy for my 3 black children, okay, how they're being affected. And moreover, they weren't positively affected, and they didn't get nothing out of it. And I wouldn't have, and I don't want them to get anything out of it. I don't want them to buy into this propaganda crap, these terrorist organizations. I want my kids to earn a living, to become successful in their own marriage, which they are, by the way. They are very successful. But what I don't want to have happen is people to judge them by their flesh tone and go, oh, you got stuff because this, DEI and all this BS.
Mhm.
Um, so that's why it is my business. Okay, it is my business, and so that's just one example. I'm very opinionated.
Yeah.
I'm old enough that I've been around the world for 62 years. I've seen a lot of things, and I've been able to filter, the good from the bad. And it's not to say that I can't change my mind, and it's not to say that I'm stuck in my ways. I'm not. I like to think I'm in a lot of ways very progressive, although I'm a conservative. I'm very progressive. I do a lot of things that some might consider liberal. It's not about being liberal. It's not about belonging in one camp or
Yeah.
another. And I can't do
Not the
that
right
because
choice.
I do what makes me happy. And it's good for me, my family, because this is my life. I want to enjoy it, right? And I'm not going to be put in a box because because the dumb masses want me to be in the box and be on their team or whatever it is, right? Or the dumb masses don't want, they don't want me to think out loud and speak out loud. I won't do that. I stand my ground. I stand alone. And if more people would do that, we might be living in a better world. But
Yep.
unfortunately, we have what I call the dumb masses. You know, Even the Roman Empire, collapsed. Why? Because of dumb masses. Why did it collapse? Because the Senate was like, you know what? Feed those idiots bread and circus. They won't be paying attention to what we're doing over here. We do all kinds of stuff. And then Rome finally did collapse because of that, right? And that's kind of what we're going through right now. We've been going through it for probably the last 12 to 16 years, actually longer than that. Since I retired out of the Army, it had already started. But basically, what is happening is we're being manipulated by the elites on the top, and they regard us as part of the dumb masses, and they're just feeding us shit and keeping us in the dark like mushrooms and hoping we don't catch on to what's going on. But things are changing and changing rapidly, and people are starting to become more and more aware of the lies. For example, we'll kind of take a different segue here. I told you it's gonna be an easy podcast. You don't have to say
Oh
anything. In
yeah.
fact, if you want to leave, go shopping in Walmart for about an hour or two. Come on back,
No,
William. I
dude.
got this.
You no, you got me interested, man. You got me interested, and I'll interject here real quick, not to cut you off, but You have three black children. You've seen the world. You've defended this country. You've been a frontline warrior. I think you more than have earned a vested interest and an opinion to be shared. You know, I
Yeah.
think
No, you're right.
more so than the average individual, you know? So,
Yeah. I've been there, done that. I've seen it. I've been exposed to it. I made my sacrifice. Let me tell you, I made a lot of sacrifices, more than most Americans will ever make. I've been injured. I'm wounded. I've lost families, marriages, all, in the name of the service for my country. But where I was going to go with this was, the lies that we've been told and we've been living. For example, I'm going to tell you, I'm very glad RFK is now head of, the FDA, because he gets it, right? So food, for example, we have been fed poison for a very long time, since the 60s. Okay. And we've been led to believe stupid lies like, cholesterol is bad, salt is bad, cut that stuff out, when actually the opposite is true. Cholesterol is good, salt is good, you need it, a lot of it. Your brain, your myelin in your brain is 100% cholesterol. Okay. We can go on and on. I can go through all this and the science behind it, the skewed studies like the lipid hypothesis by Ansel Keys, who literally started this madness on the cholesterol myth, which was funded by the food companies and the pharmaceutical companies. They have lied to us. They have poisoned us. And the United States government has bought into it, the stupid food pyramid, which is completely
yeah,
inverted and wrong. And I
yeah.
would argue that the United States government is complicit in millions, hundreds of millions of people, not just in America, but around the world, because they bought into the lie. And guess, like I said earlier, the rest of the world, they look at us as the shining light, the example. And when we say salt is bad, cholesterol is bad, guess what? Yeah, let's do what the Americans do. No more salt, no more cholesterol. I hate it because in this part of the world, sometimes I get some really bland food with no salt because they think salt's bad. So they don't put it in your food,
Mm-hmm.
And when we ask for it, they're like, are you crazy? They've been brainwashed. It's called mass hypnosis psychosis. There's lots of terms for it, but it's a form of brainwashing that has been around since the existence of man. The Germans in World War II, the Nazis were really good at this. Basically this
Oh, yeah.
inculcation, this methodology for manipulating and brainwashing people. That's why do you think so many Germans got on board with killing Jews? They didn't have a problem with Jews until somebody above them said you should have a problem with Jews. And they made up a bunch of crap. And then in a matter of months, Goebbels knew it was going to happen. He said it. Hitler knew it was going to happen. They said it. They did it, and they converted the minds of a lot of people. And there's a thing called information escalation bias, where once you show the Germans, hey, look, the Jews really aren't bad. They're humans like you. Maybe they have different religious beliefs. They couldn't accept it because they've been brainwashed. It's crazy how it works. And the people at the top, these politicians, they're all manipulators. They understand the psychology of people, of humans, the human condition. They understand manipulation. I mean, look, unless you only got one brain cell and it's not functioning, all you got to do is watch the lies, the blatant lies that even a 5-year-old can say that's a lie, being repeated every day. Why do they do it? Because they know through repetition, people will eventually accept that information and run with it. Okay. Now, I don't get on this theory and science behind
Mm-hmm.
that, but going back to the food, um, most people today are dying from what we call modern nutritional diseases. There's four of them for sure. Four of them. Cancer. Cancer has its roots in mostly in nutrition. The food that we eat is carcinogenic on many levels, particularly sugar. It's the worst
Yeah.
thing you put in your body.
Yep.
Worst thing you put in your body, and it's addictive. And so cancer, now not most cancer is nutritional based, although there are other types of um, you know, xenotoxins and things like that, for example, pollution, et cetera, that can also affect our biochemistry. But but most cancers are preventable. In fact, before the 1900s, the rate of cancer was probably less than 5%, and usually 5%, and usually it was genetic. And it didn't always end in a death sentence. Okay. Now today, one in two people will develop cancer in their lives. 20 years ago, it was 1 in 4. You see how this keeps
Wow.
escalating?
Wow.
And so cardiovascular disease is through the roof. Why do people get cardiovascular disease? Cholesterol. Let me tell you, it's not cholesterol. If it was cholesterol, there'd be no Eskimos. That's all they eat, cholesterol. right?
Mhm.
So in fact, they get the healthiest hearts in the world. It's not until they eat American or Western fare they suffer the same rates of heart disease as the rest of those. So cholesterol is not the enemy. It's not bad. It was a lie because what the scientists and the food companies always knew was our bodies are fat burning furnaces, man. That's where our primary source of energy comes from is fat. But what we have done is turn that off and we put sugar in there, right? Our bodies are not designed to burn sugar. It'll burn it, right, as an alternative to fat, and it prefers to burn sugar because it's faster, okay? And it is addictive, but it's not part of our normal diet. Okay, and then it comes. Well, I'll talk about the vegans and vegetarians later. So heart disease. Does cholesterol cause heart disease? And the answer is no. And they go, well, of course it does, because when people die, you look at all the cholesterol in their blood vessels, it's clogged up. No. Did you ever think that maybe there was something else contributing to the heart, the cholesterol being clogged up? And there is. You know what it is? It's sugar. Sugar causes inflammation. So you
Mhm.
have 86 miles worth of blood vessels running through your blood, and suddenly you start clogging it up, and the sugar causes inflammation and constricts your blood vessel to half the size. Now you're pushing 190 miles of blood through, your heart's working hard because it's got more volume to push. And of course, it causes heart disease. Moreover, there are other things in our diet, and it's not just diet either. Homocysteine levels, okay, it's amino acid, but not necessarily a good one. Homocysteine is a free radical, and we do produce homocysteine through exercise. We get it from foods that we eat. Things There's a lot of things that elevate our homocysteine levels. These free radicals, and what these free radicals do, they cause inflammation. Okay. Constriction. And so when your blood vessels start to close up, the cholesterol is good for you, can't get through, and it binds up. And moreover, homocysteine particularly causes scarring, okay, on the lining of the blood vessel, which it actually causes a restriction of blood flow, and of course cholesterol. And then people die from congestive heart failure. They blame, they go, it's the cholesterol. When no, it really wasn't the cholesterol. It was the sugar, and mostly the sugar, but also the homocysteine. And so, well, how do you counter these things? And homocysteine, for example, it's a free radical. So what you take is an antioxidant. What's the antioxidant? 200 micrograms of folic acid. And what is that? And how does the antioxidant work? Well, what happens? A free radical is basically it's a molecule that's lost its electron. That's why it becomes free radical. Basically, it's just going crazy and tearing shit up, right, at the cellular level. But what does the antioxidant does? I.e., for example, one example is folic acid and or vitamin C, etc. It donates its electron and stabilizes that free radical. Okay, it donates electrons. Okay, and so when people are not taking vitamins, they're not taking vitamin C, they're not eating healthy diet, they're not getting the free electrons, their bodies are filled with free radicals, and they're damaging themselves at the cellular level, and then disease starts setting in. So these are just a couple examples. Then you have, okay, Alzheimer's. Oh my God, Alzheimer's is a disease. And by the way,
Yeah.
none of these things are diseases. They're not diseases. They're disorders with their basis in nutrition. So Alzheimer's is a disease of the brain, ALS, disease of the brain. No, it's not. You know what it is? It's a it's the consequences of eating too much sugar. Okay, now they're coming out in the last probably 6 months. They've kind of come out and go, yeah, it's type 3 diabetes. All right.
Type 3.
Whoa. Even your brain produces type 3 diabetes, Alzheimer's, type 3 diabetes. Alzheimer's is the consequence of sugar. Your brain actually also produces insulin. All right. But sugar causes inflammation. Then what happens is you produce so much insulin, you become resistant. Then the insulin doesn't work like it's supposed to. You got insulin floating around, and it's going out and eat carbohydrates to neutralize all this. And you eat more carbohydrates, but the insulin doesn't work. Well, it works, but the cells at the cellular level, the body goes, man, I'm tired of all this insulin, and it resists it, and it doesn't accept it. The other thing insulin does, it tells the rest of the body, don't burn fat, just burn sugar. So then you're eating fat, you're just storing the fat, and you're getting fatter and fatter and fatter, right? And inflammation, inflammation, inflammation.
Yeah.
So there's a cause and effect. Okay. So Alzheimer's, ALS, these cognitive disorders, most of them are as a result of sugar. Cut the sugar out of your life. You don't need it. And when I say sugar, I mean all sugar. Carbohydrates, noodles, potatoes, fruit, vegetables, get out. All right, we're not designed to eat that. And then okay, and then here comes the vegetarians. But we're related to the chimpanzees and the gorillas, and they eat fruits and vegetables. Yeah, they also eat meat.
Yeah,
Yeah, they
other
also eat
monkeys.
meat. But here's the thing. Here's the thing, man. Their digestive system's different than ours. Okay, they've got a cecum, a part of their digestive systems over 4 feet long, and therefore, when they eat vegetables and fruits and veggies or any type of leaves and things like that, vegetation, it actually sits in that 4 foot cecum and basically ferments over time. And guess what? Vegetable happens with vegetables? It converts. All right, the fatty acids convert into sugars and becomes energy. Cows, why do cows have 3 stomachs? Because it takes a lot of work to break down these plants and convert them into energy and sugars, right? So all animals, everything is burning carbohydrates. They just have a different process to get there. Um, so people think that we don't need to eat. We don't need to eat meat. We could just live off vegetables. We're not designed for it. Okay. You might just think because we're related to chimpanzees and monkeys, but we haven't. I mean, at the end of the day, human beings have been around in present form about 250,000 years, but actually we started evolving 6 million years ago. And over that course of time, our digestion has converted and changed. I always joke, I said, look at a cave drawing. Do you see a salad bar drawn on a cave drawing? No, you see them killing freaking animals and spears and eating meat, right? We are carnivores. Oh no, we're omnivorous. No, well,
Yep.
we can eat bugs and we can some vegetables and plants and stuff like that. But are we really, is it our optimal diet? And the answer is no. Now, I will argue that some cultures have become more adapted to eating a little bit more in the way of vegetables, like rice. For example, the Asian culture, they eat a lot of rice. Um, but they have at the hormonal level, they have some nuanced differences that has allowed them to adapt to eat rice a little bit more, right? But really, at the end of the day, they can survive just fine on pure meat. The problem is, I'm not saying meat is scarce, um, but it's for some cultures it's hard to get meat on a daily basis, right? It's expensive, it's hard to acquire,
Mhm.
and rice and vegetables are easy and fruits, and then there's a history why all that has become as well. Like for example, the Roman Empire, they fed the dumb masses bread and circus. Why?
Yep.
Because they know bread is carbohydrates and it actually dumbs you down. It actually affects your IQ levels, right? So let's keep the dumb masses dumb, feed them bread, keep them entertained while we're over here doing, bad things and they won't even pay attention and they're not going to be smart enough to figure it out. And they were really good at it. And so a staple of carbohydrates and breads and fruits and vegetables is not healthy. It's been proven in time. People that just eat that type of a diet are not as healthy as people that are on either a carnivore diet or a keto diet, right? So we have to have, and everything you need for nutrition, minerals, vitamins, etc. It's already in meat because that's what the animal consumes. That cow that you're eating, it's already converted that plant, that vegetation, right, and it's extracted all the minerals and everything it needs out of that, and it's in the muscle, and you're consuming that. So, anyways, where I was going to go with all this was, and then so we got diabetes. Again, type 2 diabetes is not a permanent condition. I've actually met people, not necessarily obese people, skinny guys. Like, yeah, I'm a diabetic, type 2 diabetic. I'll be on medicine for the rest of my life. I go, who told you that? Well, yeah, the doctor said I'll be on this medicine for the rest of my life. I go, it's a lie. You can reverse type 2 diabetes really easy, really easy. Stop taking carbohydrates. Eventually, your body's going to go back to it's going to go back to baseline. And eventually you'll start becoming desensitized and your life will be back normal. But see, and I'm not knocking doctors, all right? I have a PhD in alternative medicine, natural health. I'm not knocking doctors, conventional allopathic doctors. Um, the problem is most medical schools do not teach very much, if anything at all, about nutrition deliberately. Why? Because most medical curriculums are what funded by who? Pharmaceutical companies, right? They're basically giving all these
Yeah. Yep.
scholarships and funding to all these medical schools, in the name of yes, we're trying to advance science and medicine to help people. when actually what they're trying to do is sell more drugs. And so they're going to limit what these doctors learn, right? And what do doctors mostly know? They know how to cut things out and give you drugs to mask the symptoms, and that's it, right? And I personally coach medical doctors, and we've had these conversations, and all of them have agreed. Yeah, I didn't really learn anything about nutrition, right? They actually learned more from me than they ever learned in med school, right? Because why? Knowledge is power, man. And
Mhm.
when you start empowering people and doctors, right, the caregivers, like, yeah, no, you know what? There are other ways, there are alternative options to medicine, natural medicine. If you do that, you can get the same effect as you actually you'll get a real effect, a positive effect, other than just masking symptoms or having to go cut something out. So again, this all started with, we've been lied to. We've been brainwashed. There is a psychological operations campaign out there on so many levels, man. If you don't believe me, look up Operation Mockingbird. Okay, it's a CIA program. It's been around for a long time. I got video of this, and you've probably seen this. Probably most people have seen this. You ever see the clip of almost every news organization in America, even though they're not affiliates, they're all parroting the same exact word by word narrative. It's like, what the hell? They're saying the same. They're describing something, and it's word for word. Where did they get that script from? It wasn't happenstance. They all said it's not. No, it's not coincidence. Somebody fed all these agencies the script. Here's the script. Say this, and you can look at the side by side recording. Hundreds of journalists or newscasters at the same time saying the exact same thing. It's called Operation Mockingbird. It's a psychological operation campaign, basically to brainwash and change how people think. That sounds like totally insane, but you can Google it yourself. Google Operation Mockingbird. You can find the videos. They're all out there, and it's mind-boggling. And the question is, why would our government do that to us? Why? And who's doing it? Well, we know who's doing it. The CIA is doing it. Operation Mockingbird is a CIA program. It's been around for a long time. Okay, and there's more. There's many other things that go along with that, but. We've been programmed. We've been programmed to think a certain way. Most of us have. In fact, I will argue 80% of the population in America has been.
Yeah.
Okay. There's studies that have come out, and 80% of people, just to avoid conflict, just to not be that guy or girl, will go along with the herd just to avoid conflict. Even though in their mind, in their heart, they know it's wrong, they'll do it. A classic example, okay? COVID. COVID. Greatest scam ever played on the human population.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
80% of the population took the vaccine, vaccinated their children, are still taking the vaccine because they believe, one, they believe it worked, but more importantly, they don't want to be that guy that didn't take it, right? And become the scapegoat, all the threats that came with, the unvaccinated, the
Yeah.
unvaccinated, or everybody. It's like, well, if you're vaccinated, why are you worried if I'm not vaccinated? Right? If you're vaccinated, it works, then why are you worried if I don't vaccinate myself? But they see how they've manipulated us, or manipulated them. And so people actually think, the unvaccinated, it's the disease of the unvaccinated, when it's actually and now it's turning out it's the disease of the vaccinated. 7 million people, it's estimated 7 million people have died just from the vaccine alone. Kansas
So
County and counting.
on the vaccine, I have a personal experience with that. My dad was elderly and he pressured me into getting it. I I I I fought back for about 6 months and then I caved. And now I have issues with my pancreas. My dad had to have open heart surgery. And so I talked to my aunt who's an OBGYN. She was in San Diego at Sharps Hospital, and she said there's no literature behind this. She's not anti-vax. She's none of that. She just said she doesn't trust the medical literature, and there's not enough study behind it to where she could be like, you can take this, and I don't think you're gonna have any problems. She was not comfortable with it, and after the
Yeah.
personal experiences, my dad's tune definitely changed.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you took the vaccine, right? And we really don't know what the long-term consequences are. And there are people go, oh, I'm fine, I'm healthy, it didn't bother me. Yet we don't know, right? In fact, it's, this is probably going to have some effect on you for the rest of your life, some more than others. You know, and here's the irony, right? So the government says, you know, you're not allowed to inject yourself with steroids, or you're not allowed to give yourself this drug, but we're going
Mhm.
to force you to take the drug, right? And here's and then the argument is, well, they didn't force you. Well, let me tell you something. Telling somebody that if you don't take the vaccine, you're going to lose your job and you
Yeah.
can't feed your family, keep the roof over your head, that's coercion, man. Okay. That's basically force, you know? And so, you know, I don't want to hear this crap. Nobody forced you. Yeah, a lot of people were forced to lose their job. I'll tell you this, man. I know personally know entire families in this part of the world, they couldn't work. They were restricted from going out. And most people, especially where I'm in the location I'm at, they make their money. They exist on day wages. In other words, they go out, they sell muffins and street food. They park cars, and the money they make that day is what they feed their family with. And they were not allowed to go out and interact with society, right? Stay inside, wear a mask, and those types of things. While literally families were suffering in this region of the world, suffering, starving, and decided instead of me and my family starving to death, we're just going to hang ourselves off from the rafter. You know, they were mass suicides. Okay. Um, I got to tell you, man, that just pisses me off to no end. And the people that did this, they knew what they were doing. It's all coming out now. It's all
Yeah.
coming out,
It was
right?
leaked out of the
And
Wuhan lab. Yep.
it's all everything is coming out. The real truth is coming out, particularly on the vaccines, man. Even the virus is starting to show where its origins really started from is in our country. Okay. But the reality is a lot of people are dead today, were murdered as far as I'm concerned. Okay.
Could argue that.
That didn't have to die. We have upended everybody's lives, and you still have people out there that just don't get it, and they still think that, by the way, the virus had a 99.9978% survival rate. You're more likely to die from the cold and definitely the flu than you are from COVID.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's what I did math early on. I started looking at, okay, all the numbers of everybody that's supposedly died from COVID, which, by the way, if you crashed on a motorcycle and died on a motorcycle, it was automatically considered a COVID death. There's a reason why that was incentivized by the government to give hospitals and others that diagnosed a COVID case $1,300. They were making money just on the diagnosis. And I have personal knowledge on that one. Uh, yeah, that's no shit. I got a friend, him and four other guys made appointments to get the COVID vaccine, right? And then they canceled it. A week later, they all got letters saying that they were positive for COVID and needed to come in and get the vaccine. They didn't even take the damn test. How'd they get the letter? Why? Because
That
the
happened to a
place,
friend of mine in Bakersfield, man. Yeah. They were doing
yeah,
that.
well, happened everywhere.
Yeah.
Everybody that, you die in car accidents, COVID death, COVID death, they were making money hand over fist. Okay. And it brainwashed everybody else into believing this is a real threat. I looked at the numbers, just the numbers they put out there, and I thought, okay, this many people globally supposedly died. I looked at all the statistics, basically how many people are in this, in the world, how many actually died from COVID, and the numbers I did the math. It was 99.978%. And I said, why would I take a experimental poison that hadn't been tested? They've already admitted that they didn't test it. All
Yeah.
right. And they just concocted bullshit, put it in your, in a needle and gave it to you. And I said, there's no way I'm going to do that to my family. And to this day, I'm so happy, man. I didn't
You're right.
do it. I didn't fall for it. I prevented my family from doing it because I look at now, I have one family member that did it and was forced into it, Unfortunately, it was just, and I'll give you a little backstory. The Philippines. They literally were going around, in particular where she lives, literally going around and marking people's homes that didn't take the vaccine, almost like
That's,
the Jews, right?
yeah, I was going to say
And
that's some Chapo.
yeah, and she couldn't go out and buy food. She couldn't go into a grocery store without proving she had the vaccine. It got to start to be very, very difficult. Life got very hard, and I was like, "Please hang on, hang on," but she couldn't. It was like, "What am I going to do?" And she ended up getting a vaccine, and she only got one. They gave her a fake one. She managed to pay somebody some money to give her a fake, not give her one, but doctor up. But she
Okay.
couldn't get it done twice. Second one she had to take, and she's very healthy, but she all of a sudden has all these weird, especially respiratory problems,
Yeah.
and sometimes digestive, right? And so, um, it's just insane, man. But and here's the crazy part in America, is especially in the last couple of months, you could, you could go to, all the local drugstores, and what are they doing? They're promoting, hey, get the 2-in-1 shot, flu and COVID, one shot, and they're still promoting this crap. And people are going to line up for it, go stab me and my kids. Give
Yeah.
them two of them just in case. Like,
Yeah.
goddamn, what
And a
is going
booster.
on here, man?
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy, man. But it's brainwashing at its finest, at its best. It's
Yep.
brainwashing, and it's people that don't really have critical thinking skills, and it's people that are fearful. Fearful. Fear is powerful, man.
Yes, it
Fear is a
is.
powerful weapon. You can scare people, and you can manipulate them any way you want, and that's exactly what they did. Stay away from me. You're 6 feet. Don't do. But if you had stopped and thought about it, go, wait a minute. You're telling me I can't go to church and pray to God because of, we're close, and even do it outside. We can't be together. But I can go to a riot, a rally on the street. We're nut to button, shoulder to shoulder, and that's okay. Something is wrong with that picture, man.
Mhm.
Something when alcohol stores or the ABC store gets to stay open and the gym has to be closed, something's going on here, man. None of this makes sense. And of course it's not. And it was deliberate. It wasn't like, oh, happenstance. It just what no, it was a deliberate agenda. And people don't think that, and if you start talking about conspiracy theories and the cabal and one global, global order and all this stuff, people go, look, I live in this world. I really
Yeah.
live in that part of the world, the conspiracies. I deal with these guys. I'm going head on with a lot of these globalists on things on a level I can't even talk about here. I know it's a real thing. It's not bunk, okay? But people are comfortable sitting at home, watching their TV. They've probably never left their state, probably for sure never left their country,
No.
and they
No.
somehow think they are very, omniscient and know everything. And these are people, and these are not just undereducated people. These are people that are highly educated, PhDs, doctors, judges. And I'm like, how, Elon Musk said, you can buy an education, but you can't buy intelligence. And these are people, are perfect examples of this. Like, how can you be that ignorant and have an education? Right? And it's mind-boggling,
It's the
mind-boggling.
money.
And
The money in the medical
it's
industry. It's a for-profit thing now. Insurance companies tell doctors what to do. I had one doctor, man, and I'll add on to your Alzheimer's thing with the sugar medications like benzodiazepines and opioids. For sure, benzos and alcohol, they act on the same receptors, affect the brain, and cause dementia and Alzheimer's early. And I had a doctor who got kickbacks for writing Klonopin scripts, and I was on it so long. Thank God I didn't get addicted to that. I got addicted to opioids, but that's a different story. Um, and I was on 4 milligrams of Klonopin a day, the equivalent to that. Each pill was almost like a half a bottle of 40 proof vodka.
wow.
It's
Yeah.
it's very
It's
powerful stuff.
yeah. And it's look, man, I don't have a problem with capitalism.
No, not at all.
But people bad people are using capitalism um at the expense of other people's lives and health to enrich themselves. That's what it comes down to. That's really what it comes down to. And so we live in a crazy system where there's no accountability. And I hope RFK, man, I
The
think he's starting to
vaccines,
turn around.
yeah,
Now yeah, you got states now going, okay, no more fluoride in the water. You know what fluoride is? It's rat poison. It was rat poison. Why are we putting it in our water again? Oh, because it fights cavities. No, it does not. Yeah, it affects your pineal gland, it affects the brain,
yep,
right? It lowers IQs. It lowers IQ scores. And it has been for, since the beginning. There's so much misinformation, disinformation, malinformation out there, and most people will not take a moment to really analyze it, do the work, do the research, and ask themselves, is this really true? Is this really right? And if they do, you'll realize, and this is a fact, by the way, by the time you're 35, 40 years old, half the information in your head, the information that you have learned is bunk, is bullshit. It's skewed, it's flawed, it's wrong, right? And you're going, Well, damn, I thought I knew all this stuff, and why am
Yep.
I not getting up that hill? I thought I had it figured out. No, because you got bad information in your head. You're working with bad information, and so you're getting bad results. But you think it's good information, still getting bad results. What am I doing wrong? I tell you what you're doing wrong. You're not thinking for yourself. You're letting
Yep.
other people think for you. That's what most people do. That's what most
That,
people do. But
I feel
anyway,
that
uh,
I feel that even if you question it and you come to the conclusion you still agree, at least you questioned it and looked into it and didn't just run with it
right,
like the mask thing. I always looked at the mask like, okay, so we're like flying on the planes, right? Was you had to have a mask for what, 2, 3 years? I'm sitting here going, these HEPA filters aren't strong enough. People are on the sides of me. When I blow out, where's the air going? It
right,
doesn't matter. We're in a tube that's
yeah.
pressurized and recycled air. And I was just sitting there thinking, like, this is the most annoying thing and pointless thing. Even Fauci, when you first come out, said masks don't
It
work.
doesn't work.
Don't work.
And then he said later on, you have to wear two masks. Two masks are better. Like, what the hell, man? The guy was completely inconsistent, right?
Yeah.
And I actually think he's a criminal. I think this
Yeah.
guy needs to be arrested, charged. He is no better than Goebbels in Hitler's World War II. This guy is a mass murderer, as far as I'm concerned. The evidence is coming out. They're coming after him. There's many others on board, but you know whether he did it to enrich himself. And by the way, he owned the patent on this stuff for a very long time. He was already aware of this virus a long time ago. Um, but whether it was to enrich himself or it's just purely incompetence, either way, he needs to be held accountable. Because
And
lots of people are dead on his bad information. Not just his, but many others. World Health Organization, that's a band of criminals. That's a band of medical terrorists, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm glad Trump's going to defund them. Said, no, we're not paying them more because they are a bunch of criminals. And they're a bunch of buffoons. They're a bunch of idiots. And they think because they're in a position of authority, and everybody, is funding us. The governments have accepted us, and we know it all. You don't know it all. You don't know shit, man. And we're feeding this stupid machine that's just gobbling people up and taking their lives from them. People have to start thinking for themselves. That's what it comes down to. You got to stop being codependent on the government, hoping the government gives you everything you need, the information, right? They're going to take care. They're not going to take care of you. Okay. They're not going to take care of you. Like, for example, going back to the vaccine thing in the beginning, in 1960, I believe we got 5 vaccines. The rate of
yep.
what do you call it? Not Alzheimer's, but man, what's the damn? I'm a brain fart again right now. But no, for children, kids are suffering from form of retardation.
Oh, the
Man, I'm
autism.
too early in
Uh,
the morning, man.
yeah,
Autism,
autism.
autism. There you go.
Yeah, in
Yeah,
'89 when
autism.
they mixed
Rate of
them.
autism. Yeah, it was 1 in 10,000 then. As
Yep.
the vaccine's gone up, you see the corollary. Today, I think it's up to 73 vaccines. Okay, and the rate of autism is 1 in 32 kids. One in
Yep.
32 kids is going to have autism or has it, and people. Why are we accepting
Or-
that? I'll tell you why we're accepting it. Nobody's paying attention. Nobody's listening. Nobody's watching. And nobody's questioning it. They're just trusting somebody that, oh, they're going to do the right thing for me. They're killing you. They're killing your kids. You know, you should pay attention. And they're not. This is what really upsets me about the human condition. People basically suck at the end of the day. Most people suck. And they suck because they want to suck, because they're lazy. They don't want to think. It's too easy to let other people think for them. And we've gotten really lazy because everybody's brains is in a box, right? This thing has a calculator, does our math for us. It's got AI, it thinks for us. It's got picture albums in there. It's got all our memories in there. It's got all our notes. Our brains are in the box, right?
Yep.
And we rely on this instead of just critical thinking skills and using our minds. We're not doing that, and there's no excuse. Because as I said earlier, life is a series of compromises. It's a series of choices. What you're not changing, you're accepting, you know. And if you're good with all this crap, then you know what? Don't complain to anybody about being sick, being unhealthy, having a miserable life, not making money, and feeling like you're a prisoner in your own little, house. And stop it, man. You're ultimately responsible. That's what I'm trying to tell people, man. Free yourself. Free yourself. Do the work. You free yourself, do the work. That means you're going to actually have to think and stop playing, you know, whatever Xbox and all the goddamn video games and all the bullshit, all the distractors in the world. Stop watching these soap operas and all this, you know, Kardashian crap,
Oh my
and
God.
freaking
Yeah.
educate yourself. You know, educate yourself. These people are not educating you. There's nothing to be learned from any of those people. Nothing. You know. Um, so anyway, that's my little rant. I always start off a little rant every day.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not mad at the world because, you know, one of the things I try to tell myself every day is to observe and not absorb. In other words, be aware of what's going on, but don't take it personal. Understand there are bad things happening all around me, and I could be a potential victim if I allow it, but I'm not going to be. So I see what's going on, but I'm not going to let it get to me. I'm going to oppose it and work against it. And there's a reason I live in 3 countries. I live a sovereign life. I don't work for nobody. I do what I want to do. I created that life for me. Nobody gave me anything. Nobody. I mean, you know, nobody. I always tell the story. Nobody on either my side of my family has a college degree. My dad had 11th grade education. My mom had 9th grade education. I wasn't born with money. You know, I wasn't. I had no advantage of any kind. What I did was I did all the work, you know, besides my military background, concurrently at the same time, you know, I earned my education, my PhD, all those things. I did it on my own. I learned. And by the way, just because you get an education doesn't make you smart. Okay. What I do is I question everything, I analyze it, and I draw my own conclusions. But I figured this out a long time ago, and I said I'm not going to be, you know, a lemming following the whole herd over the abyss, right? I decided I'm going to break away, cut my own trail, stand back, go, wait a minute, what are we doing here? I'm not doing that. And so this is why I live a sovereign life, because it was a choice. And I made the work, I did the work and made the moves to get out of this hamster wheel that we're all in. So I can stand in the cage and watch everybody else in the hamster wheel running to death, going nowhere. And I got out of it. I created my reality, and we can all do it. We can all do that. Um, so, you know, if you don't, I don't want to keep talking like dark stuff, and you know, I want to enlighten people a little bit. And that's what I'm trying to do is bring some awareness to people's lives. Like, you know what, you might not like what I have to say, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm not wrong. It's your choice. If you don't like what I have to say, tell me why. Go look it up for yourself. Do the work. Do the work. You know, don't get it from one source. You're gonna have to get it from multiple
Yeah.
sources, and you're
Yep.
actually gonna have to go ahead and compile information, analyze it, and then basically arrive at a conclusion. It's mental work. Okay, do that first before you throw me under the bus. And then second question is look at your life and look at my life that I just described, and who's winning right now. And when I say winning, um, are you where you want to be? Why not? Are you sick? Why? You know, have you ever questioned why you're sick? Why you? You think you were born that way? No, we're not. Most people are not born sick or born prone to disease. For example, cancer. There's no such thing as a cancer gene. There's no such thing as a cancer gene. Who made that up? Right? It's people with certain genes seem to have a propensity, they're more likely to get cancer, but it's not a cancer gene. Did you know that 97% of all the diseases we suffer are not diseases, they're just disorders. We only have 3% of the diseases are actual diseases. You know, malaria, for example, would be a disease. But Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, they call it cardiovascular disease, right? It's pretty scary. It's a disease. Like you can catch it. No, you can't catch it. You created it by the food you eat. We've been brainwashed and brainwashed and brainwashed. And once you stop and start thinking critically, you start to realize, man, you start to challenge the paradigms. It's like, man, they almost got me on this one. Well, they got me for a long time. They got a lot of people.
Uh-huh.
Anywho, but at the end of the day, man, you know, you in the beginning of the show, you were asking me before we got on air about some, you know, other stuff about basic training, things like that.
Uh-huh.
I'm done with my little rant here. You know,
Okay.
I'm not going to change people's minds. I just want to raise awareness, make them do the work. Go think about it. You know, save your life. Don't take my word for it. Do the work. You know, there are options out there. Stop believing all the crap that you hear from everybody that you consider a figure of authority, because they're not figures of authority. They're not even authorities. And For your own safety, for the health and safety of your future generations and children and everything else, do the work, and you'll come to realize at some point, man, I've been living a lie. There is another route I don't have to follow this herd. There is a better way. Be a free thinker. Um, Basic training, you were asking me in the beginning about some questions about basic training, some of the funny stuff that happened there. When I think about basic, you call it boot camp. So boot camp is the Marine basic training. Army
Okay.
has basic training. So, um, but I think back to some of the movies like what was it? Oh man, like I said, my brain is shot right now. But there's some funny stuff out there like Gomer Pyle, things like that. And you actually do experience stuff like that especially in basic training. I remember when I went through basic training in 1981. I ended up in Fort Benning, Georgia. That's where the basic training for the infantry was. They call it, it's called basic training and AIT. So there's 6 weeks of basic training, and then it becomes advanced infantry techniques, right? But it's 3 months, but you can't tell the difference. Oh, now we're in AIT. It's different. No, it's still the same thing. Everything's the same. It's just that after the first 6 weeks, after you get your basic indoctrination, learn how to march, do lots of push-ups, how to iron your uniform, make your beds. Then you go into, okay, now we're going to go out, and now that you know how to make your bed, we're going to learn how to sleep in the mud and do infantry stuff and dig foxholes just to fill them back up, right? So, but so what you get in the infantry is honestly, you get a lot of guys that, like me, I didn't have a college education. I just went right out of high school and wanted to be an Army guy. And so you get literally in my platoon, we had 40 guys in my infantry platoon that were from all walks of life. I mean, we had everything you could imagine. We had guys from the ghetto, gangster rappers. We had cowboys they were rodeo guys. We had it all, man. Every flavor, every nationality, everything you can think of. But all of us had one thing in common. We were really, we were in the bottom rung of society, man. We were young, but we were down here at the bottom, and we were perfect cannon fodder. We were perfect infantry candidates, bullet stoppers, so to speak. But with all that said, there was a lot of funny stuff. There was a lot of rift and strife. There was, people, you know, for example, when we talk about, for example, team building, because that's what it was. We had to build a team out of this platoon, right? The drill sergeants go, I got 40 guys here. I got to train. They don't know each other. They come from different walks of life, right? And I've got to get them to learn to live together and work together and fight together and die together if that's what it takes, right? And so, um, so it's a form of team building, and there's 5 stages of team building, right? And so the first one is what we call forming. And so they did that by bringing us all to one platoon. So they formed the team. And then after you have forming, you go through what's called storming. Okay. So everybody's trying to feel each other out. I'm from wherever. I'm from the Bronx or LA or, whatever. I'm a gangster, I'm a Crip, whatever. I kill you, and white boy, you're a cowboy, whatever, right? There's all this stuff going on, right? It's nothing changed yet. So they're culturally we're different, with different backgrounds, different ethnicities, and not even really not a whole lot of difference in education levels because we're all kind of just young guys that just want to join the army because maybe we can't get a job or maybe we're trying to stay out of prison. And so after you go through you have the forming phase, you have the storming phase, where basically everybody's trying to establish a hierarchy and their station in the hierarchy. You're evaluating everybody else, and ultimately what happens, there's some guys that rise above the rest and are kind of looked up to a little bit more. They have a little bit more power. They have more leadership. And then you have the other guys that are just on the bottom, right? They're just down there and everything in between. And then you go through what's called the norming phase, which is, okay, we're all kind of like getting along. We can eat together side by side at chow hall. We can sleep in bunk beds next to each other and not call each other names and fight. And then you get the performing stage, which is stage 4, where now we're going out and we're working like a team. Okay. We're not mad at each other no more. We accept each other for what we are, and we go out and we got a mission, right? And so we perform together. Okay. And then the last stage is a journey, right? So a journey is when, okay, guys, it's all over. Now you're going to go assign your units somewhere around the world, right? And off we go. It's all over. We go away, right? So those are your 5 stages, and you do go through those in basic training, in AIT, which is interesting when you go through, especially the storming phase. That's where you see all the funny stuff. And I'll give you a good example, man. There was one guy when I got there. He was what we call a holdover. He was in the last two basic training classes, but they didn't graduate him. Had to recycle him. He was a Korean guy. His English was really, really bad, and he just couldn't quite conform. He couldn't quite figure it out, right? Partly because of the language thing. Second thing, he wasn't the smartest guy there either, and and so and he was kind of a nonconformist, right? So when you go to basic training, at least when I went through, they take everything away from you, everything, your personal clothes, everything. Okay, you're not getting a cell phone. We didn't have them back then, right? In fact, your phone privileges was on Saturday, and you got there was like a 2 hour window where 40 guys got to get on the same phone and talk to somebody. So you got like 5 minutes, right? So you had to learn to blah, 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 and then give it to the next guy, and sharing, right? Um, but they would take everything, your clothes, I mean, everything, your underwear, everything, socks, everything. And they would give you everything they wanted you to wear and have. And so it's all Army issue, including your glasses. You show up with civilian prescription glasses, take those off. And here are, we call them birth control glasses. You get the Army thick frame, the Poindexter glasses. Those are your new glasses. And so I remember his name was Lee. So Lee, we were on a shooting range one day, and if you can imagine a shooting range, there are these big round holes, and you sit inside this hole. It's got sandbags, and you're shooting at targets downrange, and the targets are pop-up targets, and each lane has either red targets or blue targets. That way, you're not shooting the guy next to you. You know which target you're shooting at, and it's all structured, it's all organized, and they tell you when to put a magazine in your weapon, when to charge it, when to aim, when to start shooting. You're pulling triggers, and these targets pop up and down, right? You have to shoot them it's a timed event. And I was next to Lee in his foxhole, and I'm shooting, and the drill sergeant, I had a classic drill sergeant, man. The classic drill sergeant. He was this big guy named Sergeant Williams, black guy. And he was just jacked, man. And he had this face on like a bulldog, man. And he was the epitome of drill sergeant. Even his voice, man, like, wow, man, this guy commanded respect and power. And he was big and just. And he walks up and he goes, Lee, he goes, what in the hell are you shooting at? Right. And Lee was shooting everybody's targets, not just his, but everybody's targets, right? And and I wasn't paying attention. I look at Lee, and Lee looks up to the drill sergeant, and he goes, sometime red, sometime blue, Sergeant. And then the funny part was he had his civilian glasses on, not his birth control glasses, and the lens on the right side was cracked, and he put scotch tape on it, and he flipped it upside down so that his firing eye was clear as he's looking through his glasses, right? And the other one had scotch tape on it. And the look on this guy's face, the helmet's back, the glasses are upside down with scotch tape on it. And he looks at the drill sergeant and goes, sometime red, sometime blue, Sergeant. I was like, oh my God, man. And Sergeant Williams, he was a big dude, man. He grabbed this little Korean guy by the scruff of the neck, pull him out of the foxhole to put that gun down, and pull him off the range, because the guy, he considered him a safety hazard because the guy didn't understand the rules. You got a guy on a gun range doing what he wants, and he's not even compliant with the glasses and all that stuff. So that explains why that's why he got recycled twice, right? But there was more stuff later on. Again, with Lee, for example. So lucky for me, I got picked to be a squad leader. So we have 4 squads, right? And that means I had 11 guys in my squad. I'm the guy in charge, even though I'm just like them, but somebody's got to be accountable, right? So as a squad leader, it was my job to make sure that, all the guys in my squad, their boots were, shined, their pants were ironed, everything was perfect. Their beds were made perfectly. Their wall lockers, everything was perfect in it by the standard operating procedures, so on and so forth. And I remember right at the end, it's graduation day. It's graduation. This is it, guys. We're going to graduate, but we got a big inspection. The barracks got to be inspected. The drill sergeant come through like they always do. Everything needs to be watertight, let's do this thing right. And so everybody's waxing the floors, right? We used to, we would buy the wax, and we had the buffer, right? And what you do is you light the wax on fire, you melt it, and then you pour liquid wax everywhere. And then you take the buffer, you run over it, and then another buffer with a towel on it, and you polish it so everything looked like glass, man. I mean, look, the military barracks, at least in my day, were just like pristine, right? But we had to put the work in. And I remember, so everybody's hustling, they're working, except for one guy, Lee. Lee is laying on his bed like this, legs crossed, just laying on his bed. Everybody else is hustling. And so I'm the squad leader. I'm trooping the line. I'm coming down and I see him laying there. And so what I do, I'm not breaking stride because I forget what I was going to do, where I was going to go. And I grabbed the corner of his mattress and I lifted it up on a little bit to kind of get his attention because his eyes were closed. And I yell at him and go, Lee, get your ass up, right? And get to work, right? And I just keep on marching, thinking, oh, he'll get up. And then something told me to stop, turn around, look out. And when I do, I look around and Lee's getting out of the bed, out of the bunk. And he stands up and he's walking at me. And I kid you not, this is what he does. He spits in his hands and it rolls up his fist. And I'm like, huh? Right? And I'm like standing like, what is he doing? And then he swings one arm like he starts swinging like this. And he go, he punches me right in the face. I'm like, what the hell? Right? And as soon as that happened, man, I get up and I go to hit him, and like half my squad just tackled him under the bed, right? They just jumped on top of him, beat the shit out of him, right? Like, what the hell was that to happen, right? And
Yeah.
those are the kind of things that happen all the time. We had another guy, a white guy named Hirschberger. Now Hirschberger was he wasn't a cowboy. I forget where he was from the north, but he was just a mean, angry white guy, right? And just hated the world, hated everybody. He didn't get along with another guy, a black guy. The black guy was from the Bronx, and they were bunkmates side by side, and they were both prejudiced. And you could hear him laying in bed, right, at night, F you, N-word, N-word, white boy, back. And then all of a sudden, the fight breaks out, right? And we got to go break it. I'm like, dude, go to sleep. So there was always that going on. And then one night something happened with Hirschberger, and I think he was up, and the drill sergeant walked in, and they caught him doing something, whatever instigated this thing. The drill sergeant said, okay, everybody out of the rack. And by the way, we only got 4 hours of sleep a night. 4 hours, man. By the time you got done cleaning the barracks, showering, preparing your uniform the next day, it was midnight. We had to be up at 0400 every day for physical fitness training. So we got very little sleep. And so sleep was precious, man. And we didn't want drama. Sure enough, something happens, and the drill sergeant's like, everybody get your ass out of the rack outside right now in formation. We're all standing there just in underwear, Fruit of the Looms. That's it, right? We're all lined up, position of parade rest or attention. And he's like, okay. And he gives us a little lecture, and then he takes us out to the running track, makes us all lay down, and we're low crawling in our underwear around the track in the red clay for hours, crawling and crawling and crawling.
Oh,
and while we're crawling, he's walking behind us, chewing our ass, and he's getting on us about no teamwork, and he goes, one guy messes up, everybody's messed up, and that's the kind of stuff we would go through. So you're low crawling all night long, you're finally when you're done, you're soaking wet, you're covered in red clay, your underwear is ripped up, and then if you're lucky, you got to go back to your bunk for an hour before it was time to get up and do physical fitness training,
Yeah.
But every day there was drama like that. Another time, so there was another guy, I remember Pie Face, we call him Pie Face. So there's this guy, he had this big, fat, chubby, round face. He was a little overweight, but he had a big, like, round face. That's why we call him Pie Face. And he was the really quiet, nice guy. Didn't cause any trouble. And, we kind of felt sorry for the guy because he was catching a lot of flack from the drill sergeant just because he was a little slow. And I remember every morning at 0400, we go out and do calisthenics. So it would be pitch dark out there. And then, oh yeah, we had to run in combat boots and our fatigues. We didn't get running shoes or nothing like that. We were running leather boots for miles and miles and miles. And you're wearing at the time we had the old, we call pickle suits, the old green army uniforms, right? The khakis. And that's what we did physical fit. And not only did you wear that for physical fitness training, you wore that all day long as your duty uniform, right? And so the problem with that is you're running these pants, you start chafing between your legs because they're not running shoes. They're pants, right?
Yeah.
So, man, I had such bad rashes between my legs, my thighs. Oh my God, man. And it turned into fungal infections. We all did, man. And it was hell on wheels every day. And so, we're out running, all together as a group, we're singing and drill sergeant's leading the way. And you got one guy carrying the guide on the flag, and we go on some long ass runs. This is Fort Benning in the summertime. It's humid, it's hot, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, it's dark, and you ain't got a lot of sleep. And, it's going to be a long day ahead of you again and again and again. And I remember, I shit you not, man. So Pie Face is falling out of the formation. He can't keep up. He's falling back, right? and and we know he's gonna get an ass to him. It's gonna be bad if you don't keep up, right? And so he's falling back. And so today, Hirschberger decides, you know what? I'm going to be a good guy. I'm going to change my behavior and do the right thing. I'm going to be a team player. So what does Hirschberger do? He falls out of the formation and goes back to Pie Face. And he's like, come on, bud, I can help you. Come on, let's run together. You can do this, man. He's trying to motivate him. He's trying to help Pie Face. The drill sergeant see that and you go, what are you doing? Oh, you two like each other like that? Oh, you like each other? And then now they're just tearing up Hirschberger, right? And Hirschberger's just trying to help the guy. And man, right there on the spot, the drill sergeant, all right, you two guys like each other, huh? You little lovebirds, huh? You like each other? Hold hands. So they had to run together holding hands, right? And they had to hold hands for the rest of the day. The drill sergeant's like, every time I see you, if you're not holding hands, you're going to do push-ups until I throw up. And there was the craziest shit because these guys are literally now we're standing in the chow hall, right? In the chow line. And by the way, you're at position to pay rest. You better shut up. You better be looking forward, you know, and then when one guy moves, everybody else takes one step forward and then they move, right? Until you get to the chow line, you grab your tray, you hold it out, and the guy slop something on there, and the next tray is slop, and then slop, and then slop. And Hirschberger and Pie Face are standing in line holding hands. Those are the only two guys standing side by side holding hands, walking up to the chow line, you know, grabbing their tray, you know,
Oh
and they
man.
sitting down holding hands at the table, right, with hands on top of the table, and they're eating, right? And it was, oh man, it was embarrassing. It was humiliating, you know. We were
That's
trying not
fun.
to laugh at, you know, because we get caught laughing, we're gonna get, you know, we're gonna get in trouble
Yeah.
too. So we're all straight face going, oh my God, you know. And this was all, man, Hirschberger was so humiliated by that, right? It was so indignified. He's like, I tried to be a good guy. I tried to help him. Screw you guys. I'm going back to the way I was doing business. But those are some of the things that really stand out in
Wow,
my
man.
mind, man. Those unforgettable moments, man. But you know what happened finally was at the end, um, we all pulled through, you know, and at the end, we all respected each other, shook hands, hugs, man, you know, we had that brotherly love. After 90 days, it was like, you know, one team, one fight. All our differences were set aside, cultural differences, race, all that stuff didn't matter. We realized we're the
Yeah.
movie, A Band of Brothers. We literally became a band of brothers. Unfortunately, we didn't go together to the units. We went different ways. Actually, then they started doing the military, started doing cohort programs where the entire platoon or company trained together and basic training would all become a unit, going to sign together. So they always stay together. They call them cohort units, right? Which was a pretty cool idea. You go through basic and AIT with the same guys, and now you're a fighting unit together. I like that idea. I
Did
think it was
it
better for continuity.
did it work? How long did they do that? And why'd they
For
stop?
your I don't know if they stopped or not, honestly. I don't know if they still do it, but I know that was a program they had started. And we started getting entire platoons and companies coming in as cohorts, right? They were already gelled together, you know? And I
Yeah.
think it makes it easier to that way than trying to assimilate. You're the new guy in a platoon, and I can speak from experience. So you're the new guy, you're trying to figure out what's going on, who's who, you're trying to assimilate, you're trying to fit into, you know, business and what do we, you know, you're trying to find your station in life, even though you're private, you know. There's a period where you've got to there's an adjustment period, right? And sometimes you don't adjust at all. But really interesting experience. And I always tell people, you know what, especially young men, you should join the military and don't be afraid to be a soldier. Don't be afraid to be an infantryman. Yeah, you might get killed. Okay, let's not lie. Okay. But going into the military is the best university in the world. You're going to learn everything you need to know to prepare you for life. It's better than having a college degree. Everything you need to know to survive in the world out here, even in business, military already taught you. They just use different terminology. But when you start thinking about, oh, this is the same as that, you realize I'm already prepared. And so I do highly recommend the military. You know, not just for selfish reasons, for personal improvement, but I also recommend it, especially now. Okay, especially now, that you go in and be, you know, call it, what do you call it, patriotism or whatever, but go in and represent, you know, our country, our people, be prepared to fight for them and the American ideals, right? I used to mentor guys all the time, especially young men. They would, for years, they'd call me, hey, I'm getting ready, I want to join the military. Can you tell me what to do, where to go, how to do it, and guys would literally come to me in Florida from different states, all right, and spend the weekend with me. And I'd take them out, show them gun shooting, talk about the military life. I start telling them how it's going to be like and what to prepare for and what you should do now. And guys would go in the military. And then I got to the point, and especially in the last 4 years, guys would call me. I remember the last guy called me from Los Angeles, young man. He goes, I want to join the military. I want to go into special operations and kind of do what you did. Can you give me some guidance? I said, sure. I said, don't do it. That's my guidance. He goes, huh? I said, yeah. I said, why would you join now? I said, who are you fighting for? It's a socialist regime. I said, the training you get, by the way, has been watered down quite a bit because of the whole DEI thing. It's not the military. I happen to have personal knowledge. My son's a Green Beret. Okay. My business partners, their sons are Green Berets. Okay. We all got these soft backgrounds and we know what's going on. The mission is completely changed to political correctness, DEI. It's not the same, right? It's these soldiers going down range like a parade army going, look what we got, but they don't have the same substance or effectiveness as when I went through. And it's just because of politics has literally, dripped all the way down to that level, and have completely disrupted, combat arms, the military. But now,
Turning around though.
Say what you want about Hegseth, at least his mind's in the right place, and he's getting it done. Suddenly, you know what? Everybody gets the same standard of performance, men and women. You can't do this. You're not qualified. We're not lowering the standard so you can make it. Like Ranger School, that was a classic example where they lowered the standard so women can come in. So they go, look, women can be Rangers. Actually, I know the guys in the Ranger committees, and it was all watered down. It was all bullshit. Nobody wants to talk about that, but it's all BS. Here we go, we're leaning towards idealism versus practicality. What's real? Ideal. Oh yeah, everybody's equal, but we're not. Okay. And people want to hear that we are not equal. We're not, we are different. Men and women, and even men are different, right? Not everybody's cut out to do certain things. I can't have a baby. My wife can, but I can't. I I heard Hooters was being sued not too long ago because guys were suing them because they couldn't be Hooters waiters, wear the booty shorts and stuff. Like, what is going on in our country, right? And so this crap has got to stop. But nonetheless, I stopped referring people. I said, be sovereign, go out and make a living on your own, learn how to take care of yourself. Don't be codependent on anybody, and particularly an employer or government. Make your own way in your life. So no matter what happens, you have some sovereignty. We'll never be 100% free. We're not. Okay. Somebody's always got their hand in your pocket. The IRS, the government, somebody always has control. We're all under control, even me. However, I have more options. I have more latitude to move around and do different things. So I have a little bit more freedom than most people do. But I still fall under the law. I'm still under the influence of, the government and the police, et cetera, but I have a little bit more flexibility. But going back to what I said earlier, the military is the greatest show in town. I would highly recommend it for many reasons, not just the education, not just for what it is, patriotism, things like that, but also character development. You'll really see who you are. And you'll learn how to make friends. You'll learn how to accept people. People want to paint the military as a racist institution. They've started doing that over the years. It's the least racist institution out there. The least racist. I don't think I could ever really experience any kind of racism except what I mentioned in basic training. They brought that in, but that got diffused quite rapidly in those 3 months. But
got what you deserve.
And it's not just men either that I'm referring to. Women. There's a place in the military for them. There's a place for them. They have strengths as well. But for me, the discipline, the character development, the cultural, development, and the camaraderie, all those types of things, man. The social dynamics are far superior than the civilian life. Far superior. The reason I thrive out here is because the military trained me on how to think and trained me to perform at a level that the average civilian doesn't perform at. I'm always perplexed that, I did work for a company for a little bit when I got out of the military because my personal company hadn't taken off yet. And I watched the level of performance, and they were very successful companies, a Fortune 250 company, but it would take them 2-3 weeks to process a request or a memorandum just to answer a very simple question. I'm like, this is not hard. In the military, this would be answered within minutes, done. Move on, next thing, right? And I'm like, how did we build such an empire moving at a snail's pace? It's not because we're slow and deliberate and analytical. It's just we're not very efficient. Most companies are not even efficient. And that's why a lot of companies like to hire veterans because they come in with a different mindset.
Yeah.
They're higher achievers, and they get things done. Um, but there's always going to be everybody's going to have their, counter opinion, blah, blah, blah. There's this rotund, I'll put it that way, rotund chick that was on TikTok recently, driving his car. She fears, I know this is going to make a lot of people mad, but she goes, why do veterans get discounts? When they go to wherever, they get a 10% discount. Movie theater asks them, are you a veteran? Yes. Oh, you get a 10%. She goes, why? That's not fair. How come I don't get a discount? Right. She just, why, they get well, they get a paycheck, blah, blah, blah. And why do we as taxpayers, we don't get the discount? And I'm like, man, this is the mindset's out there. It's not the first time I've heard it. How about this? First of all, as a veteran, I actually pay my own salary. I pay taxes too. So you're not just paying my salary, your taxes, but my taxes pay me too, right? I always thought that was kind of weird. It goes full circle to me. I earned everything I have. And by the way, I don't know any veteran demands a discount. When people offer it to me, do I take it? Sure. Why not? You want to give me 10% discount? Great. I'll take it. You know what? And it's because people are trying to show their gratitude for, for the sacrifice I've made. And what's my sacrifice? I'll tell you what my sacrifice is. Multiple divorces because I was never home. Okay. I don't have custody of some of my children because I was never home and I got divorced. Okay. I've got injuries. I'm 100% disabled. I've spent half my life in some shithole around the planet, doing somebody else's bidding for them. And when I look at this, and then the other thing is, if you had to pay a soldier, and when I say a soldier, I'm talking about a warrior, a fighter, an infantry guy, just an infantry guy, let alone a Delta operator, a Green Beret, or SEAL, just an infantry guy. And if an infantry guy said, or you said to an infantry guy, what is your life worth? It'd be priceless. My life you couldn't afford it, right? But I'm going to take it for a very paltry paycheck, like minimum freaking wage paycheck.
Yeah.
So I can go out and defend your right to throw me under the bus, right? And so this is what people don't understand. We work for chicken shit. I was a master sergeant when I was making $38,000 a year with 3 kids and a wife. I had to rent my car, my home. I had used cars. And that's the price. That's what I got for the sacrifice I made as a Green Beret, as a Delta operator. And this is what kills me about people. They don't appreciate it. And even Obama said it, man. Obama's like, he felt like veterans should pay for their own medical. I'm like, it's because it's a choice we made. I'm like, dude, if I didn't make the choice, who's going to do your fighting for you? And if I get injured, don't you think the government should freaking mend me?
Yes.
I mean, you broke me.
Yes.
And so it's not a regular job. That's the mindset that's out there, the brainwashing that's out there. And I know most Americans don't feel like that.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there are people that do think that, and, it is what it is. Of course, everybody threw her under the bus. They just shredded her, rightfully so.
Deserved it.
But, these are people, they're allowed to breed and vote, and that's the crazy part, and, so anyways, let's not even go down the voting road, but,
yeah. So
about that.
where did you get sent to and stationed after basic?
So I ended up in Fort Bragg. So I spent my entire 20-year enlistment at Fort Bragg. I was fortunate. Most guys don't get that. But literally, I was in my first 4 years was in the 82nd Airborne Division. I was in infantry, then I was a long range scout. When my first 4-year enlistment ended, I went ahead and re-enlisted. I got solicitation from the unit to try out, and I did. I made it. One of the few guys that actually made it. I spent 10 years with them. And while I was with them, I went to the qualification course to be a Green Beret. Got my tab, my Green Beret.
Okay.
And then at some point, I left the unit. I went to 3rd Special Forces Group, and I did 5 years there as a team sergeant for an A team. And then I retired. And then from there, 9/11 happened. I started my own company. Got recruited by the agency, the government, and I worked for them for 10 years, doing the same thing as a paramilitary operative, but as a contractor. So I spent probably on In 10 years, I spent 9 months out of the year downrange somewhere, launching lead or running these certain projects. I got out of that in 2011 because of the Discovery Channel. Something I would go to Hollywood for a few years, didn't like that, ended up in Hong Kong. Lived there for a while, running security detail. Met my wife, ended up in Jakarta, started a business, an enterprise there. And then after a few years, we pulled 10 pegs. We moved to Bali, which is where, our other enterprise is. We've been here over 7 years, and we have a brick and mortar security company here. We've got a bar, restaurant, lounge here. So we have business here. We have extended family here. And so that's kind of the path that I took, but I'm still very mobile. I travel quite a bit between the Philippines, United States, and other countries doing projects. Lots of different types of projects, security, movies. Oh yeah, they're making a movie about me, by the way. I forgot to mention that.
Oh, okay. And your book
So
as well. Um,
yeah,
I'll
yep.
put a picture. Can we talk about going from airborne Delta Green Beret, that experience?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, my wife just gave me an omelet, man. She's feeding me
It's all
breakfast while
good,
I'm
man.
talking. So
It's all good.
uh, love my wife, man. Oh my God, Asia. I can't say enough about it, man.
I've heard
But
there's very difference in the cultures. Very
oh my
big difference.
God. And
I've heard.
yeah, you know what? Women act like women,
Yeah.
they're not trying to, they don't, there's roles and they work. My wife she's not a slave. She faithfully serves me, not because I ask her to do it. I can do my own things, but she takes care of me in every way, feeds me, everything, man. And it works. And because of that, she's been very prosperous as well because of what I do for her. Um, so the process. So basic training, we talked about that. From there, I went to the 82nd, I ended up in an infantry company, and ultimately in a long range reconnaissance platoon and doing infantry stuff, basically walking long distance with a rucksack on my back, carrying a gun in the rain, snow, sleeping in the mud, the dirt, digging foxholes, infantry stuff, just like in the movies. And then I hit this point at the 4 year mark. I had a choice, stay in or get out. Honestly, I wasn't being challenged. I got tired of digging foxholes just to fill them up and sit under a tree for 3 days, wiping down my M16. Wasn't enough for me. And so I was married at the time. I had my baby girl, who's now 40, believe it or not. And so I was like, do I want to get out? So that's what I thought I was want to do. I called my mom, and I always tell the story. So I called my mom and say, hey, mommy, I'm thinking about getting out of the army. Could you put up with me and my wife and my little girl, for about 3 months in your house till I get on my feet? And my mom, in her very harsh, stark German accent, it's like, no, not no, but hell no, right? So it's like, okay, thanks, mom. And so I had nowhere to go other than re-enlist. And I got the letter from the unit saying I was eligible to apply to try out. And so I thought, well, you know what? If I'm going to stay in, I'm going to go to the top. Bypass
Yeah.
Ranger schools, bypass Green Berets. I'm going to go to the top, which is almost impossible. It was impossible. Statistically, I should have never made it. And but I committed to making it. Trained super hard, like in the best shape of my life. I was like an Olympic athlete. All I could do was eat, sleep, breathe, think Delta Force every day. I would train on average 6 hours a day, 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours. The stuff I did was like superhuman stuff, man, to prepare for me. That's how bad I wanted it. And I'll be damned, I got the letter says I was accepted to try out. I went, and you never know how you're doing performance wise because they don't tell you what the standard performance is. In other words, they just tell you to do something, and they don't tell you when it's going to end, or how it ends, or what you have to do to be successful. They just tell you do the best you can. That's all you hear. Do the best you can. Have a good one. Do the best you can. Have a good one. Sorry, not have a good one. Do the best you can. Like, damn. It's like very stoic. In fact, going through Delta Force selection, they don't call you by your name. Every day they assign you a new color and a new number, right? So one day I'm blue 22, the next day I'm pink 36, right? That's so there's no personal acknowledgement of your existence other than you're just a slab of meat that walks around carrying a rucksack. And in fact, all your instructions are written on a board, right? And that's where you get your instructions from. The the operators that are running the program, they're very stoic. There's no interaction. If you talk to them, they won't talk to you. They'll just tell you do the best you can. Have a good one. Those are the only things they're allowed to say to you. I'm like, damn. But everything else you need to know has been written down, and you have to follow that exactly. And and then you do some very long distance walking on your own. I've walked through 3 states with a rucksack on my back under all conditions, all terrain. It's literally one of the hardest things I think I've ever done. No doubt. And I was in the best shape of my life, man. Man, I was good. And when it was all done, of the 110 of us that started, 6 of us completed the course, and 3 of us actually got selected. And we had to go in front of a board. There's all kinds of stuff you got to do again. More psychological evaluations.
Mhm.
Everything's evaluated critically. And so I was one of I was one of 3 guys out of 110 that got selected.
Wow.
That's twice a year they do that. We've had courses where one guy's made it. One guy from the entire military. Okay, that's how hard it is. Okay, why? How's that different from buds? I hate to bust people's bubbles about SEALs. I got a lot of SEAL friends. Okay, I'm not knocking them. They're hoorah, whatever. But if you want to do a comparison, here's the comparison. We've all seen the SEALs, buds training, right? They're all running down the beach carrying a boat, and they're full of sand and wet, and suffering, they're splashing the water, freezing, right? But what are they doing? They're doing it as a collective, as a group. So what happens when you're in a group? You kind of get empowerment from the other guys. You look over, you see Joe Snuffy, who is not at your level, but he's hanging in there. You think you're going to quit? Well, I ain't quitting if he ain't quitting, right? So it's an empowering thing. Moreover, you can kind of hide in the crowd. You're all running down a beach carrying a boat. You're a little bit shorter than everybody else. That boat's not quite resting on your shoulder like everybody. So are you really carrying the boat, or you just kind of run along with everybody else faking the funk, right? So there's ways to work things, to get through it. And the SEALs are not looking for, they're not looking for that individual guy that they can send out on his own. The unit does. The unit's looking for the guy they can send out at any level. Even me at the time, as a 24 or 23-year-old E6 with 4 years in the Army, they want to know that they can send me unilaterally on an operation, or maybe even interact with the President of the United States and inform and guide and consult with the President on matters that concern combat operations with Delta Force. So they're looking for the best operator, not the best team, right? The theory is, if you're a good operator and you can operate unilaterally, the Jason Bourne thing, then you can probably operate as a group. And they're looking for that. Can you operate unilaterally? Can you be a team player? And do you know your place on the team? And can you follow when you need to follow, right? And can you lead if you need to lead? So they look at it from that perspective. And that's why it's so difficult. And it's not easy. It's very physical, but it's more psychological. Man, and it's, there's and the standards of performance are classified. Nobody knows what the performance standards are except what we call the selection and training sergeant major and selection and training commander. They're the only 2 that have the information, and that shit is safeguarded. And when they're replaced by their new guys coming in, the new sergeant major commander, it's like a sacred thing, man. Like, oh, not to tell. Here's the information. Lock it up in the safe. It's really well guarded.
America,
Probably
yeah.
one of the best secrets ever, man. It's crazy. But so I did all that. Made it. Had a great time. Did a lot of cool things in life. Got a lot of training. Government spent millions and millions of dollars on my training, the things that I know. And then I did go through this qualification course to be a Green Beret while I was in the unit. And then I came back. So I was a light and heavy weapons expert. And then ultimately I became what's called an 18 Zulu. Basically, I was qualified to be the A-team sergeant, the leading NCO on a team. I went through what's called Operations and Intelligence, ONI course. So that's where I got the Zulu designator. Now I'm qualified in the intelligence piece of it as well. So I was qualified now through the training and everything else to run an A-team, be an A-team sergeant, right? You probably remember the TV show A-Team, right?
Mhm.
So anyways, so I went back to the unit, did some time there, and then ultimately my last 5 years, I went to 3rd Special Forces Group. I went and did an ops job for about a year and a half, had some marital issues, things like that. And then ultimately I decided not to go back to the unit. I was going to go back, and I decided to stay in 3rd Group and take an A-team.
Okay.
Ran an A-team for a while, and then I retired from 3rd Special Forces Group. I was an ODA 394 team sergeant. And then for the last year, I was actually an operations sergeant major, but acting ops sergeant. And then I retired from there. And then out of
So,
that is when I got
so Dale,
9/11
real
happened.
quick,
Yeah,
I don't mean to
yeah,
cut you off. Can we
yeah.
go through some of the things you did as a Delta operator? And
Um,
if you want me to pause this so you can eat, bro, you want to eat?
no, no, man. No,
Okay.
don't mind me. I do this all the time.
Okay.
I do a lot of podcasts in the morning, and my wife cooks breakfast, and serves it up. So I just relax, man.
Okay.
No problem. Um, so yeah, training, right? So if you can imagine, Delta operators are the best surgical shooters in the world. I mean, we set the standard for surgical shooting, especially with a handgun. At the time, we were shooting 45 M1911s, um,
Okay.
custom built guns. We were surgical shooters. We had to be able to enter an aircraft with 250 hostages on it and 10 terrorists. We had to be able to get in that aircraft from every door and go in and eliminate the threat and not kill a hostage. It means you had to be able to take a 10% shot, shoot a terrorist in the head with a handgun at 10 meters away and not hit your own guys, not get through and through shot, shoot another passenger. We had to be very precise, very fast, very accurate. That takes a lot of training to train to that level, to be that proficient and that confident at. We also use submachine guns, MP5s. Eventually, we went to CAR 15s, longer guns. But um, by far, Delta Force is the best combat surgical shooters in the world, bar none. In fact, I believe they set the standard for combat marksmanship, hands down. I look at a lot of the techniques that are now being espoused and people are using. It all had its genesis in the unit. That was our bread and butter, man, surgical shooting. But aside from that, we had to be able to do other cool stuff, right? Explosives. I was a breacher. My job was to either surgically, manually, mechanically, or ballistically enter targets, breach things, blow doors open locks, block picking. I did all the Jason Bourne stuff. I'm very good with explosives. I've been working with explosives. Even to this day, I still work with explosives. I use explosives for breaching, for entry. I also use explosives for EOD purposes, blowing things up, and I also use it offensively to take out bad guys. So I know explosives very well. In fact, my dogs here in Indonesia for my security company, they're all canine. All the canines are explosive detector dogs, and I deploy them to the Marriott hotels and the local venues here. So my bomb dogs are out there working, my security guards are working, my dog handlers are working. We do narcotic dogs, patrol attack dogs. I've been training dogs for 45 years, so I know dogs. Um, Other training that we had, we had all. So here's the other thing: operator. You hear people use the word operator. Okay, that term was hijacked, by the way. When we talk about the spy community, we have operatives. Okay, but in Delta, here's the problem. What's the problem? Because literally, they draw people from every MOS. MOS. It didn't matter what your MOS was. They weren't looking at whether you're an infantry guy or Green Beret. We had guys that were helicopter mechanics. That fuck poke jobs. Didn't matter what your job was. If you could make it through selection, that meant you had the right mind to be a unit and you were trainable and you could get the job done, which is going to be very difficult, a very hard job. And so, but when we got evaluated every year, okay, we got evaluated by the Special Forces, the Special Forces Board. So we were being compared to Green Berets, even though they're not doing what we're doing. But it's the way it was set up. So in order to level a playing field, most of us went through special force qualification and got the Green Beret designator as well, right? But we were still being evaluated as Delta operators. And the term operator, the reason they use operator is because I had to be able to perform as a soldier, right? I also had to go out and perform as say a special agent for the Secret Service State Department. I would get credentials from them. I would wear a suit like them. I would work with them and be basically integrated with them, right? So am I a soldier now? No, I'm actually one of them. And then I had to be able to work as a civilian, going out in a civilian cover, operating as a civilian and doing civilian stuff. But I'm actually operational. So what do you call a guy? You call a Green Beret, but what do you call a guy that's sometimes a soldier, sometimes he's a special agent, sometimes he's a civilian, right? But that's his jobs. So it's three different things. How do you classify that guy? And that's where the word operator came from. Because you're
Okay.
operating in like three different spheres, right? Um, and we were the only operators, and suddenly everybody thought that was such a cool name. And then all of a sudden you hear guys, well, I was a special forces operator. I was a SEAL operator. I've actually heard guys that were cops and SWAT. I'm a SWAT operator. I'm this operator. Everybody wants to be an operator, but they don't want to do what we call a long walk. They didn't want to actually go through and earn that title, right? It's just easier to call everybody an operator. How about you're a Green Beret? You're just a Green Beret. You're a SEAL. You're just a SEAL. You're just a Ranger. You're just a Ranger. You're a cop. Just you're a cop. You know, you gotta, spruce it up a little by adding an operator to it. Like I'm more special because I'm an operator. You're still a cop. You're still a Ranger. Still a Green Beret. Still a SEAL. Right. So when you hear that, that's the story behind it. Right.
Okay.
Basically it's hijacked. Right. Anyways, um, so I had to be able to work in different areas. And I've got skills in everything from lock picking, surveillance, counter surveillance, high speed technical driving. Think Jason Bourne. Think Jason Bourne. What could Jason Bourne do? Probably the same thing I was trained to do.
Yep.
Everything, man. Explosives. I mean, it just goes on and on and on, man. We had guys that flew. I could fly a helicopter. I'm not very good, but we had guys who were trained in fixed wing aircraft, helicopters, flying. We call the gyrocopters. We were trained in anything that we thought could be used to complete our mission, right? So we had really a lot of skill set: skiing, downhill skiing, cross country skiing, winter survival, jungle survival, desert survival, marine survival, scuba diving, surface swimming, scout swimming, boats, rubber boats. Um, if you think, I guess the only way I can really describe it, could Jason Bourne do that? Jason Bourne's trained in everything. Then that's kind of how it works out, right? We were literally, I'm not gonna say we were Jason Bourne, but that's the level of training we had. Picking locks, I said that thing already. Pick something
So
out you think that James Bond, Jason Bourne would do. That's what we had training in.
so you basically what they make movies about with special forces, spies, and all that. What year was it you officially got into the unit?
1986.
Okay, so and then
I went in 1981. I joined the Army in 1981. After my first enlistment, 4 years, I went through the selection process, and then it's a long process, by the way. It's not like a couple of weeks. It's over a year. Just go through the process and end up in the unit. So I'll total from the time I applied, it was a year, a little over a year, probably a year and about 14 months from application to actually walking across the hall and becoming a Delta operator. So
okay,
1986
and
when I got there.
what was some of the first missions you went on, and then you famously were the breacher in '89 in the Panama rescue.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can talk about that one because it's been essentially declassified.
Okay,
It's been on the channel, Discovery Channel, but so I was the guy that breached the prison door on the roof to rescue Kurt Muse. It was the invasion of Panama, right? And we spearheaded the operation, so we had to get into the prison first, save his life before the main force came in and invaded. And it was 26 of us, and I was the breacher. My job was, once we landed on the roof, was to go up. There's an annex on the roof. It's 4 stories high. It's an annex. It's about a 10 by 10 cube, and I had a steel door and it had a jail door on it. And my job was explosively to breach that door, open it, so we can go in, clear the building, neutralize the bad guys, and get Kurt Muse out alive. And by the way, there's a Netflix series going to come out on that. Probably, I was told it would have been out by now, but now they're saying it's probably going to be the end of summer, beginning of fall. It's going to be called SOF True, right, on Netflix. And I said, I went to New York in November to, on camera to talk about the entire operation from soup to nuts, right, in detail. There's some stuff out there on Discovery Channel, History Channel, but it's not in the detail I went into, but it'll all be explained. But long story short, when we went in that night, it was actually midnight. It was 0020 hours. They were waiting for us. Everybody was waiting for us. And the commandant's in Noriega's headquarters right across the street. And it was a hornet's nest. That's all I can tell you. We went in and it was just all hell broke loose. There were people running everywhere. We're taking ground fire from the Panamanian Defense Forces. We're taking ground fire from what they call the DIGPAT, which is Dignitary Battalion, which was a militia. And we're getting it from all directions. And it's 26 of us. We're on this 4-story roof. We cover down in the corners. We're shooting dudes in the guard towers everywhere, man. We're taking plunging fire from the apartments around us. And we had 2 AC-130 Spectre gunships flying a counterclockwise orbit, dropping, 105s and 20 Mike and 40 Mike um, rounds on the commandancia. It was it was all hell was what it was that night, man. But we landed. I was one of the first guys off the helicopter because my job was to go place that charge on the door and prep it. While we actually had four little helicopters landing on the roof, two at a time. I had to wait for the entire assault force to land, which was we had two assault teams going, so we had about 12 guys actually going down into the prison, me included, and the rest of the guys were on the corners of the building, basically shooting and providing covering fire. And so we land. I run to the front door. I place a charge, pretty hefty charge, and waiting for the countdown. We're taking a lot of fire at this point. I'm hanging it out there in the wind, and ultimately I breached the door. We entered. We started clearing the different floors. We got down to the floor where Muse was being held. It was, I believe, the second floor now, and eliminated the interrogator, and those were guarding him. And we got him out. White blew his jail cell, blew the doors up on that. Got him out. Put him in body armor, helmet. Put him on a helicopter. And then when his helicopter lifted off the roof with some of the guys on my team, four operators, pilot, and Kurt Muse, as they came off the roof, they took so much ground fire from the prison that it got shot down and crashed into an alleyway, hit a power line and crashed in an alleyway. And the only guy that came out of that unscathed was Kurt Muse. He's the only guy that came out. And my teammates, two of them got shot, and pilot was unconscious. And then the two guys on the other side were unconscious. And one of my guys, my assistant team leader, was laying there, and as Muse came out, he realized he's the only survivor, and he's right there in the hornet's nest. So he reaches down and grabs, his name was Tom, grabbed Tom's pistol, and he starts to stand up, and the rotor blades are still spinning because the helicopter's laying sideways, but the engine's still running. And he starts to stand up into the rotor blade, and Tom kind of comes to at the same time, runs up, jumps up, and grabs him. When he does, Tom takes the rotor strike in the head, shaves his helmet off, right? Knocks him clean out in the street. So now everybody's unconscious. And the only guy that's conscious and has got a gun in his hand is the guy that we just rescued. Well, luckily, we had guys on the ground in APCs that saw the crash and were able to go and recover them. Now, we had 15 helicopters total for us. These MH6 helicopters, the people pods, we all sit on. That was assault force. So we had those go in, and then we had four Apache attack helicopters. We had, I believe, four Cobras and two or three UH-60 command and control and medevac birds. So we had 15 ships going in on that target. So the Little Bird got shot down. We know when the Cobras got shot down into the Commandancia. So we lost a couple of helicopters already. But fortunately, nobody actually died. We had guys get wounded, but nobody actually died from their injuries or gunshot wounds. And I remember my helicopter was supposed to be the first helicopter back to Howard Air Force Base. We were going to land on a tarmac. They had what's called a JMOUS setup, which is a surgical, medical surgical unit. All the doctors, everybody, they were expecting a mass casualty event. So they're all waiting for us. They're all standing arms crossed and with command. And we're supposed to be the first helicopter back. And we were the only helicopter back. I'm like, man, what's going on here, right? So we're sitting there, engines running. My team leader like, okay, hold on, don't get off the helicopter. Let's see what's going on. He goes over, he's talking, head bob and stuff, comes running back. He goes, put a fresh magazine in. He goes, the precious cargo just got shot down. We're going to go back in. We got to go get him. And I thought, oh shit, man. That's when I got scared because I knew where we just been. And now we're trying to fly back into that hornet's nest. It was bad. It was really a lot of gunfire, a lot of tracers. So reload weapons, get ready to go. Engines start to spin back up. And as we're spinning up, also we start seeing the strobe lights from the other helicopters coming in. And they start landing. And, one on the engine, team leader said, hey, they recovered him. We're good to go. We're not going to go back in. And then everybody showed up. But all total, that it took us 6 minutes to get inside the prison, rescue him, and get him out. 6 minutes. He actually wrote a book, 6 minutes. Super successful hostage rescue mission under some of the most dire and worst conditions you can imagine, man. It was fabulous. But there will be a docuseries coming out on it, and I'll be narrating in detail. There's a lot that went on. There's a lot of stuff I didn't mention right now, but there's a lot there, and it's worth watching. And It'll
Oh
really
yeah.
give you appreciation for those type of operations. Um, but I've done like I've actually participated in every campaign from 1983 Grenada to literally the present conflicts abroad, with the exception of Bosnia, Serbia. Serbia, I was actually transitioning out at that time. Not there was a lot going on there, but I've been to Grenada, Somalia, Mogadishu, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Operation Enduring Freedom, Iraqi Freedom, Afghanistan, Yemen. I was a mercenary. I literally was in Yemen um, with a small strike team working for the Emirati government. Their military giving them a special forces capability, taking out high value targets. There was 11 of us on this team. And you know, again, if you want to learn more about that, there's a lot of stuff out there. Just look at my name and Yemen. You know, there's a lot of stupid shit out there about, you know, American mercenaries killing in Yemen. Okay, that's just sensationalism by the left and by the, you know, the NGOs that hate Americans. They want to make it seem like something that it was not. We didn't go murder nobody. We took out terrorists is what we did. Bad guys, high value terrorists. And very surgical about it. But so I've worked as, you know, in that capacity as well. There's a BBC documentary that has me on it about that scenario. Again, it skewed it quite a bit. Um, but so I've, you know, I've done quite a bit in the space of combat
Uh-huh.
and war fighting. I'm 62 years old, and I'm still kind of I'm actually involved in some things right now that I would consider are probably some of the most dangerous things I've done in my life, even right now. And so I'm not afraid to go out and meet the enemy, not afraid to take it to the bad guy.
Hmm.
I don't do it for free. You know, I'm not sure. It's my life and my family I got to worry about. I do get paid handsomely for some of the things I do. But, you know, I'm a warrior at heart. I was raised as a warrior. My sister was in the Navy. My brother-in-law was in the Navy. You know, I got my uncles. I can go on and on. I come from a military culture. It's part of our DNA.
Uh-huh.
It's part of our heritage. And, you know, and I feel like, you know, it's just my duty to be a soldier, to do my part, you know, and that's why, and I enjoyed it. You know, I'm not gonna say it, I'm not gonna lie, I enjoyed it. You know, I like being a soldier. I'm not afraid of combat, never was afraid of combat, I'm never afraid of all this dying and stuff, because when you like doing something, I'm not a bloodlust thirsty killer either. You know, it's not that. I was good at what I did. I'm a warrior. I'm actually a professional boxer. I got 6 degree black belts, first degree black belts. You know, I'm a ring fighter, MMA
Hmm.
fighter, you know, licensed fighter. I'm a warrior. I
Yeah.
enjoy fighting. Who fights who doesn't enjoy it? You know, who becomes a boxer because they don't enjoy it?
Warriors.
It's in
Warriors.
blood, right?
Yep.
And you know, you can call me a barbarian if you want. Well, I'm a barbarian with a PhD and a master's degree and a bachelor's degree, speaks multiple languages, owns several companies, you know, done quite well for my well self, and I saved a lot of people's lives, and I still help people and save people's lives. So, you know, it's all part of the warrior skill set. All
Yeah.
these things I just described are the necessary tools in order for me to go out and guys like me to go out and do what needs to be done. Do the things that most people don't have the spine or the guts or the heart to go do. And I'll go do it. And I enjoy doing it. So, you know, be grateful.
Yeah.
Fighting out of fear is always a bad idea. So I don't fight out of fear. I fight out of confidence. So I cope well.
So you were
Does that
in
answer your question?
Somalia. Were you part of Black Hawk Down rescue?
Yes, but we were coming to Somalia. We were coming to Somalia on October 3rd and 4th when our C squadron got in a big firefight in Mogadishu. We were already packed up and ready to come in to relieve them, right? We call it RIP, rotate in place. We were on our way in when that happened. So we actually showed up the next morning, you know, after the dust settled, and immediately started going out and looking for Michael Duran. Gary Gordy, the Congressional Medal of Honor winner, was on my team at one point. He was one of my teammates. And we're still trying to recover the bodies. We're still doing what we call signature flights. We're flying around, you know, looking for, you know, things that we need to do. A signature flight is we just kept going around flying, and we call them skinnies, right? Somalis, skinnies, because they were skinny. And what they were doing every time they saw the helicopters leaving the airfield throughout the city, they would start burning tires and banging pots, right? It was an alarm system. They were notifying everybody that were in the air coming, and so everybody could react appropriately, right? So in order to kind of beat the system, we would do a signature flight. We just get up and fly around on purpose just to make them go through the alarm. So they never knew when we were really going to attack or not, right? So doing quite a bit of that. And we did take some mortar fire and stuff like that. We took some casualties, while we were there. They were just still dropping mortars on us and stuff like that. So to answer your question, yes, I was there, but no, I was not in the street fight on October 3rd and October 4th. So anyways,
Okay.
probably one of the most dangerous places I've been, bar none, one of the most dangerous places I've been. It was bad, pretty bad. We just wanted to recover the bodies, like Gary Gordon, Randy Shugart, Michael Durant, and we offered a bounty. Said, listen, you just bring his body back, we'll give you money. So these savages, what would they do? They take their own dead and burn them, so it's crispy critters, and they bring them back. Hey, we got your guy. Give me some money. It's like, come on, guys. We do this thing called DNA, and
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
know, right? And we got to that level of craziness. But what an experience! But I gotta be honest with you, Bill Clinton is a sorry son of a bitch. He killed a lot of people needlessly because what did he do after that happened? He withdrew us. He sent us to do a mission. As a commander in chief, he's supposed to have the same resolve that he expects us to have to complete the mission. And because that happened, and he's worried about it, the political blowback and all the public fallout, he withdrew us. So right now, 18 Americans are dead. 5 Delta operators are dead for nothing, died for nothing. We never accomplished the mission. ID got away, nothing happened. So, and 77 guys were wounded, some of them very seriously for the rest of their life. And we walked away shamefully as defeated, but we weren't defeated. Our president was defeated, and our president let us defeated because he was afraid of what the lefties on his side would think of him and not reelect him. And that's a fact. That's a hard, cold fact. And that's one of those times in my military career I thought, man, this is bullshit. This is really BS, man. And I have zero respect for that dude, and even less respect for his wife.
Yeah.
The less respect for the Democratic Party that allowed this. And then it happened again in Kabul, right? 13 dead Americans for what? It was so botched. It was completely irresponsible. And we've got 13 more innocent Americans dead now. Lost $82 billion worth of tactical equipment. It's being used now against us and in different parts because of politics. Elon Musk said it great one time. I'll have to paraphrase because I don't know exactly how he said, but essentially he said this: war is when young men that don't know each other, have no bone to pick with each other, are sent to combat to kill each other by 2 men that do know each other. Right? Think about that for a minute. That makes so much sense.
Yep.
You got old men that know each other. They're going to send young men that don't know each other to go there bidding and fighting on their behalf. Yet these same son of a bitches like Biden, he won't send his kids. His kids are not going to fight. They're making money. They're grifters. They're all grifters. Yet young American men and women have to go die because of their political agenda. And it's not even political. It's actually personal. They're using politics to forward their personal agenda. And again, I don't care if people listen to this, they don't like it. Truth sucks. Suck it up, buttercup. That's all I can say. But that's how my opinion. That's how I feel about it. To me, the facts are pretty obvious. So those are 2 incidents right there, just in and of itself. And then we go back to Vietnam. Look what happened with the withdrawal from Vietnam.
Yeah.
Total failure. Why? Politics. We as soldiers were winning the war, but on a political level, we ended up having to lose the war because the politicians, and they're afraid of not being elected, and all the hippies and all the bullshit, man. And and unfortunately, man, and young men don't learn the lesson because they weren't aware of the lesson. They join the military, they become cannon fodder. And I've lost a lot of friends, man. I lost a lot of friends for what? Even in Afghanistan. To what end? What did we accomplish out of it? Nothing. Well, someone would kill Osama bin Laden. But it's not over. And I got dead friends that, they'll never come back to see their children, their wives, and they died for what? Old men in politics that know each other. They say young men that kill each other that don't. Man, I've actually become friends with some of my enemies from the battlefield. And when you start meeting them, you realize just like me and you, we're the same kind of guy.
It's not.
It's shameful, but
Yep.
it's the human condition, right? Since the beginning of time, men have fought over 12,000 wars. Over 12,000 wars. Is it ever going to stop? It's never going to stop. You know why? Because I keep saying it was a guy named LeBone, but it's not. I'll find a name. But there's a book that's on it. It's called Man is a Warring Ape. Men are warring apes, right?
Yeah.
Basically, what it comes down to, we're savage at the end of the day. There's always going to be war. There's always going to be combat. There's always going to be death. There's always going to be a struggle for power, money, and pussy. That's the three driving forces, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Power, they go hand in hand, and at the end of the day, procreation, furthering your your bloodlines, and controlling the world, right? That's what we all want. And so that's the driving force, and that's not going to change as long as that's part of our DNA. It's going to continue. And so there's no such thing as utopia other than it's an idea. But it's an idea that will never come to fruition because the human condition will not allow it. We are, at the end of the day, we're warriors, we're warring apes, we're killers. We cannot live alone. We can try to live peacefully, and we can to some degree, but at the end of the day, there's always going to be racism. There's always going to be these things that we frown at. And we think because we're civilized human beings, we can get over that. Well, we ain't got over it yet. How long we been around? You know, we're
Yeah.
not getting over it because it's not part of our DNA, man. It's just like dogs and cats. You can train some dogs and cats to live together, but at the end of the day, when you go back to, the most wild and rudimentary state, their most fundamental being, dogs and cats eat each other, kill each other, they're not friends,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like that with
It's
humans too.
it's so ingrained in us, man. You can even go on YouTube and search chimpanzee wars, and they have
Yeah.
a strategy. They flank. They fight each other over land, and they take each other's females, and they get rid of the males. It's so ingrained in us.
Funny you say that. Funny you say that. So where I'm at yesterday, my friends, some of my partners came here, their wives, a couple of days ago from another country, and about 1 hour north of us, there's a place called the Monkey Forest. It's a jungle, right? And it's a sanctuary, and they have a big old board, and they actually have 8 different troops, right? And they have the numbers, the breakdown of the babies, the young adult mothers, fathers, the dominant males. There's over 1,000 monkeys in total, but there are 8 different troops in this area that's maybe 10, 15 square acres. Round, right? It's all jungle. And literally, and you walk down these trails and you come across all the little troops, and they're not overlapping. So there's one troop, they own the swimming pool, and they were guarding it from all the other monkeys. There was other troops out at other areas where the best food was. The whole way, right? And so I looked at it, and you see some monkeys chasing off the other monkeys from the other troop, but you're all the same species. But there's that, what's the word I'm looking for, man? It's not, I don't call it, almost like an ethnocentric, but they're not. They're the same species, but they're cliquish. This is
Yep.
my tribe. This is my family. And
Tribal warfare.
although we're
Yep.
the same breed, we're not like. So they do the same thing. They do the same thing, there were monkeys in there were completely maimed, and they were in separate cages. Got maimed by the other troops. They crossed the boundary, got their ass kicked. And
Yep.
and were disabled for the rest of their life living in a cage. Yeah, it's again, man is a warring ape. I said that a minute ago. Kind of
Yes,
true.
sir.
In a lot of ways, yeah.
Yep. So throughout your time in the unit, how did you see technology come in and improve everything, or complicate? And through the 90s and the 2000s, was it just night and day, the difference of what you guys had to use?
Yeah. So a lot of the technology you see today on the battlefield had its origins where? In Delta Force. All right. We had some of the first GPS systems, the first ones. And we were the ones experimenting, trying to work it out, and we did. Very primitive at the time, but it's made way for a lot of things. Like today, we're using, it's called Falcon View, and we're beyond that. In my time, we were using Falcon View. It's literally laptops integrated with GPS and mapping systems. And I could literally have a laptop in my vehicle with layers of maps, different types of maps, with geo coordinates, MGRS systems, satellite imagery. I can just put and change the different layers as I'm driving, traveling, and as I'm getting real-time information from the satellites connected to my HF radios, UHF radios. I'm getting communication. It's all connected together. It's amazing, right? We didn't have that at one point. Now we got all that. You look at the enforced weapon system. We started off with the soft mod kit. Actually, originally we had the CAR 15, which was a carbine, an M16 carbine, goes all the way back to Vietnam. That was the shorty that we all had at the time. That was the assault rifle. And then that morphed into the soft mod kit, which was the M4 with all the bells and whistles, because we modified the CAR 15. We started adding all kinds of stuff to it, and then all of a sudden, entire kit was developed. So you get one whole box with all the bells and whistles. Satellite radios. We developed the satellite radio antennas, right? It's collapsible.
Wow.
But it has original. So in a lot of ways, I kind of went through the evolution from the more basic stuff we had from the Vietnam era to the technology we have today. The different types of radios, like the emitters and the 148s and the 151s, small radios that do all kinds of stuff, night vision goggles. Originally, the only night vision goggles we had were PVS 15s. It's like a big box on your face, and we're trying to adapt it to our motorcycle helmets so we can ride motorcycles with it, but we had to Velcro the shit on. And now we got flip up PVS 6s, 7s, different 14s. You got all kinds of different systems now, And now you just flip it down, flip it up. They're give it a wider view, and the clarity is better. So I've watched the transition, and I got to experience a lot of it just by working for the government for 10 years as well, because I got issued all the best equipment out there. Everything the military had, I had everything they had, and the top of the best stuff, man. Weapon systems, electronics, technical stuff, even training. So yeah, I've watched the evolution, and it's just moving and moving and moving. Hey, even drones. I was experiencing with the first drones. Now look at drones. Drones are
Yeah.
being used in combat, man. Drones and dropping bombs and taking out vehicles. We're in Skynet mode now with drones in combat. But I was there in the genesis of a lot of this stuff and watched it evolve to where we are today. So pretty fascinating stuff, man. It's kind of scary how lethal we're getting and accurate and yeah, I told my friends yesterday, man, I would hate to be on a infantry guy on a battlefield today, especially in Ukraine and Russia.
Oh,
You got
dude,
no
it's
chance. I actually got I have a client. He's foreign legionnaire, but he's from Ireland. I say client, he's one of my coaching students. And we are going through coaching. He opted to go to Ukraine to fight. He needed to make some money, and he wasn't there 1 month. He came back and said, "That's not for me." And I said, "Why?" He goes, one day, within a few days after getting there, he went out with 125 guys, Ukrainians. 5 guys came back, including him. They were decimated. Drone strikes. He's like, this is the Terminator, man. We're fighting drones, and there's no running, there's no hiding, there's no escape. It was pretty bad. And 30 days later, he's like, he goes, your chance of dying there is going to be pretty high.
Yeah.
Pretty high. So, yeah, warfare is changing, man. It's scary, but it's becoming more technical. We're talking about drone pilots and operations and electronic stuff. But at the end of the day, all wars finally boil down to one thing. It's the man on the battlefield with a gun. Ultimately, it's where it all waters down to that finally, right? When all the drones are blown up, electronics aren't working, jammers are on, nothing else is happening. It's going to require a guy in the battlefield with a gun to run the ball over the finish line. And so there will always be a need for soldiers. Always will be a need. Maybe not as many as we used to have, but it's kind of scary that the guy that has the best drones, the best electronics might rule and control the world. The day may come where there's no more wars. You just automatically just concede. You got me. You got all the drones. I don't have any. We're done. So
the drones are getting that dangerous. The Delta was modeled after SAS, correct?
It was originally, but comparatively speaking, there's a huge difference, especially operationally now. I personally believe there's a stark difference. There's a different way we do business. We've evolved to another level, I think. And I'm not knocking these guys; are good guys. I have nothing bad to say about them. I just think operationally now we have evolved to a different level. We're definitely better funded, better equipped, and I would even argue better trained.
Yeah.
I think my opinion again is I think Delta Force is probably the most lethal counter-terrorist unit in the world, hands down.
I would have to agree with you. And
why was SEAL Team 6 sent to get Obama instead of the unit?
Because
Or Obama,
yeah, so
Osama.
yeah, yeah, I wish it was Obama. So the reason it's actually what happened was, if you think about this in Afghanistan, in any one night, you had probably 15, 20 operations running at the same time, all the units doing something. There was only there's a limited amount, a finite set of air assets, transport, things like that, close air support, blah, 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 blah. And so what happened was, the unit they started looking at targets or potential targets, and they had to do their analysis and go, what's the probability of this guy actually being there? And so they had a matrix, and they go, if it doesn't meet a certain threshold, it's probably going to be a dry hole. He's not going to be there. We're not going to waste a bunch of assets and go after this guy when we can go get this guy. And so when the mission came down, they did get the operation. But they look at their matrix, go, it doesn't meet the threshold, give it to our little sisters, the SEALs. Let them have some fun tonight, right? Probably nothing in there anyways. Well, they calculated wrong, and they were there. I was actually supposed to be on that op with
Oh,
some
wow.
other people. I just happened to be that night somewhere else, and I missed out. But that's why it happened. And so it was just the luck. They were just lucky that night. Lucky for them, he actually was there. So that's why they got it. Not because they're superior or anything like that. It's just the unit. You don't hear about the unit because they're not out blabbing their mouth about all the stuff they're
No,
doing, writing books
they're
and
not.
making movies, right? There's a reason for that. I'm telling you what, on any given night, they're doing more shit than the SEALs ever did. And they've done more stuff that nobody will ever know. But they're not going to get credit for it because they're not looking for the credit. They really are the quiet professionals. I'm only big mouth. I wrote the book, but even then, I don't talk about everything they did, and I certainly don't talk about their operations and break we call operational security. But they are the quiet professionals. They don't have to go out and brag about what we did, none of that stuff, and so they don't do it. And SEALs get all the glory. But now you notice if you're paying close attention to a lot of the podcasts, like what's one called? There's one Anti-Hero, the Anti-Hero
Yeah,
podcast.
Brent. Yeah,
Valhalla, yeah, there's a couple other ones, right? Valhalla,
yeah.
others, and they're starting to call out a lot of these SEALs for being stolen valor and frauds, right? They're calling out some other guys in the military or in the army, but some
Oh,
of
to
the big
Kennedy.
guys, the big
Yeah.
names, well, Kennedy, yeah, he's getting called out. Marcus Luttrell
Yeah.
getting
Well,
called out.
Latrell
You know,
flat out admitted everything. He's like, fuck this
yeah,
dude up. I'm getting off this ride. And you know
yeah,
what? Got to respect him for telling the truth, right? But
yeah.
Brent and his partner, I think Tyler, man, they go hard, man. And I tune in for them. I like Brent, man. And
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
Valhalla, man, him, Green Beret Chronicles, and that other SEAL, I can't
I was
remember
just,
his name. But
I was just on Chronicles. I just did that one. It's up there with Jay. I'm going to do Kirkland in June 2nd. We'll be on his podcast in Dallas.
nice,
I'm going to be on Valhalla with Nate at some point.
nice.
We've already communicated. So you'll see me on those podcasts too.
I'm tuning in,
But
man.
yeah, there's so much I could talk about, man. And here's the thing, right? A lot of young guys out there want to hear all the war stories. What do you do? You kill one guy, you kill 1,000 guys. It doesn't matter. And I don't mind sharing experiences, but really what I care about is, can I teach you something to make you a better human being, a better soldier, right? All those kinds of things. Can I teach you something besides going out and shooting people? There's more to life than that. And so I'm kind of leaning. That's why we kind of started off talking about nutrition, things like that, right?
Uh-huh.
Because I have more to offer people than war stories. We all have war stories, right? You listen to Shrek McVee, from the unit.
Yeah, Shrek.
We go hard on one day, next day we kill another 2 hours. So what? That's cool. I know guys want to hear that. Your guys just salivating over all that shit. That's fine. Not knocking the guy. It's just what, supply and demand, that's what some people want to hear.
Yep.
That's what you want to hear from me. I'll give you a little bit, but not a lot. But also, I'm
Okay.
going to give you some other stuff that's going to hopefully enlighten you and make you a better person, make your life better, right? So,
I like that better than just telling more stories because the channel actually started with I interview a lot of people who've done a lot of time in prison, former Aryan Brotherhood
Yeah,
members, Nuestra Familia, and Mexican Mafia, and it's about turning your life around. Yes, they share their experiences, but the goal is to get people to stop living like that, to open eyes and say this is not what you think it is. It's so
right.
we try and teach, and yes, they want war stories, and I'll ask, and I don't force anyone to say anything they don't want to, but I'm more in the business of building and helping a brother than breaking a brother or just feeding them, war stories. You can get that anywhere, you
That's
know.
right. Right, man. Exactly. And you know, people look up to things like SEALs and Delta and Special Forces. They want to hear the war stories because, and I'm talking about the younger guys, because it romanticizes, I want to be a Green Beret. And they think by listening to the war stories, that's going to get them there. And it might get them really excited about it, but becoming a Green Beret or SEAL or Delta Force operator or whatever takes a certain way of thinking. And most people don't know how to think. They know what to think, but they don't know how to think. And so there it is. That's why, when I talk about the selection process, the percentage of people that actually make it is so small. You got a better chance of getting struck by lightning than me becoming a Delta Force operator, and it's not luck. It's not luck. It's a mindset. So instead of listening to the guys about how many guys they killed, that's not going to give you the mindset you need to perform, whether it's on the battlefield or off the battlefield or in a boardroom. It's how you think that allows you to do everything you need to do. It's how you think that allows you to come off the battlefield alive. Uh, it's how you think that allows you to cope with combat. And because of how I think, I can honestly tell you I've only been scared in combat one time. One time. Only reason I was scared is because I let my guard down. I wasn't paying attention. I got relaxed and got caught off guard, got ambushed pretty bad. And like shit, Comstock, you broke the rule. You broke your own rule, right? But that was the only time I was scared because I was scared and I was mad at myself for doing that. But I've never been. And when people go, if you're not afraid in combat, you're a liar or you're an idiot. No, actually, I'm very confident. I'm very cope. I can cope because I got experience and training. I'm very confident. No more. Look, I don't go in a boxing ring when I'm fighting as a professional fighter. I don't go in there fighting out of fear. I go fighting out of confidence because I got the skill set. I'm confident I can win. I might still lose, but at least I have the confidence to go and win. So I fight on a different level. Same thing in combat arms. And I've heard guys say, veterans say, man, if you're not afraid in combat, you're a fucking idiot. You're stupid. You're blah, blah, blah. No, dude, actually, I'm confident. There's three types of men. And when we talk about combat, three types of men. All right, there's the fearless guy. You know what the fearless guy is? He's too stupid to realize he's in trouble, but goes anyways and makes all kinds of mistakes. The next guy you got to have is the courageous guy, right? Now, the guy who's got courage, what does he do? He's going in spite of his fear, he's facing a threat. But that doesn't mean he knows what he's doing, right?
No.
Doesn't mean he's got this. He's just going. He's going to face the threat anyways and do the best he can. Okay, that's a courageous guy. I like that guy better than the fearless guy. And then there's a third guy, which I categorize myself as that, and that's the guy that can cope, right? I go in confidently. I'm not afraid. I'm not fighting out of fear. I'm fighting because I own this place. I own this situation. I'm controlling the situation because I'm the boss here, right? I go in differently because my training, my experience, my mindset has prepared me for this. So why would I go fight out of fear? Just like I don't get in a boxing ring and fight out of fear. If you're fighting out of fear, you're crazy, man. You shouldn't be in there. You're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna get hurt. And that's how I look at it. Even combat, mindset matters more than anything, and you have to cultivate that. It's got to be cultivated through training, through experience, through analyses, through internalization. You've got to be able to look inside yourself. Who am I? What are my limitations? Can I push those boundaries? Can I overcome that? Who know who you are and what you're not. Okay, and once you know who you are, you know your performance level and what your limitations are, and you can operate within those limitations and perform 100%. Then you're a bad son of a bitch. So that's how I look at it, and that's my warrior philosophy. Um, going in and shooting everybody up and letting God sort it out is a stupid philosophy. You know, I'm a more calculated risk taker, and I'm more practical in my approach to things. I'm more methodical, but I'm also not afraid. I'm not hesitant, and and that all comes from being able to cope, and my coping comes from experience. It comes from knowledge, right? It comes from those things. So, when you reach that level, it's a different game. So, so that's my story. That's what I'm sticking to. No.
You're right, man. The training gives the confidence. To you got everything on autopilot when you get to that level, you know. And then
Yeah,
the warrior is more mental than anything. That's what a lot of people don't seem to realize. It's
yeah,
up here. But
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right. So being a soldier is not about how good you can shoot, how fast you can run, those types of things. In the unit, we used to have the same. We need thinkers who are shooters, not shooters. We need thinkers who can shoot. Think about that for that context, right? So it's not about how good you can shoot, how fast you can run, how much weight you can lift. It ain't about that. Are you a thinker? Do you have what's called effective intelligence? Just because you have an IQ, you got a college education, do you have what's called effective intelligence? And I will argue most people don't. Most people don't have effective intelligence. They don't have, even though I don't like to use word problem solving skills, um, but I look at things like not as problems, but as challenges, right? And so my perspective changes. If it's a problem, I got to fix it. But if it's a challenge, I embrace it because I want to win, and I'm going to chalk that up into the victory column again. So think of it in those terms. Again, it goes back to mindset, right? It's a type of philosophy here, but in a lot of ways, you have to have a philosophy, especially as a warrior. What is your philosophy to putting your life out there and hopefully winning, but also possibly losing? Is your philosophy gonna? You have the philosophy to keep you alive, or is your philosophy so flawed it's going to get you killed? And some guys have a bad philosophy. So, anyways, that's the kind of world I lived in, kind of still live in, and I appreciate all the questions.
mhm. Yeah,
Be happy
you
to have you
gotta
on any other time, man.
we'll wrap
Be
it up.
on and yeah, um, talk for hours, but unfortunately, I don't have any hours. Uh, I got a busy day every day, but
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
I enjoyed it, and hopefully, some
Thanks,
people
brother.
got something out of this. And anybody can reach me. By the way, usually that's how people in these podcasts is. You can find me on DaleComstock.com. Very simple, man. My name.com. You can email me there. If you're interested in coaching, see some of the stuff I offer. You can find me on Instagram, Official American Badass at DaleComstock.com. I kind of went back to Facebook a little bit, just for shits and giggles. Kind of went through with Zuckerberg and the censoring bullshit, but I use the platform to my advantage. That's it. But those are the three main places you can find me. Not hard to find. It's and I answer every email. Unless you're an asshole and you want to attack me, which I do. Sometimes I get guys attacking me over stupid shit that, supporting Hamas and
Yeah.
Jews are bad. Blah, blah, blah. You're an asshole. I'm on the Alex Jones show. You're an Alex Jones. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, we got nothing to talk about because
Yeah.
you're just an idiot.
Yeah.
You're not
They're just
you're not a
trolls.
civilized human being with we can't have a conversation, because you're just full of hate and anger and I'm not going to give you the time of day.
Yeah. They're just trolls, man. And it comes with the territory. But uh I want to thank you for jumping on with me, man. I really do appreciate it. I'm sure there's going to be tons of questions. There's a lot we didn't go over. I'd like to have you on again if that's possible. But I just would
Anytime, man.
really like to thank you. Yeah, there's just so much, dude. I got like 30 things written down, and we didn't even get to after your military career or the Green Berets. So we'll figure it out, man. And
Okay. Yeah.
appreciate
Anytime,
you.
man. Just let me know when, man. I'll make myself available.
All right, appreciate that. You got any questions about YouTube editing, anything like that? Feel free to reach out. You want to talk? You see someone interesting that I've interviewed? If you want to talk to, let me know. I'll hook you up with them. And I like to
Great.
network, man, and I like to build things. So I think
That's how
we
you
got
get
some.
ahead.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you coming on, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye bye.
Later, man.